Bring this meeting to order. And our first item on the agenda was, Lori, you had some ideas for the changing the council working rules.
You didn't bring that? Okay.
You want to copy?
Two.
You can actually go through them anyways.
Yeah. There's just a couple of things, several things that I had gone down through, and I didn't give out copies of this because I want to be very clear from the get-go that it's not just Lori's opinion that these things should be changed. So I wanted to make sure I didn't give this out and have it become public information in that, you know, it gets printed like these are going to be the changes, because obviously we need to discuss them. But on the first part of the working rules under the section 74201, the number 2 with the deadline talks about changes to the agenda should be kept to a minimum, and I think that, you know, there should be some discussion or more specifics in regards to what types of changes are acceptable and what are going to be allowed, because there's been a couple of changes that have happened recently to the agenda and we allow it to fly, but then there are some other changes that are done. If they become controversial, you know, somebody wants to debate them, then they don't allow them to be on there, and we end up, you know, throwing the idea away. So just to give some thought about, you know, what type of changes are we going to allow to be added to the agenda after it's already developed and whatnot. And then under number 3, consent agenda, it says those items which, in the opinion of the chair, are considered routine matters not requiring debate may be included on the agenda as a consent item. And the comment that I had is currently all items appear to be questionable as to whether the item requires debate, as every item is left open for public comment, you know, for the public to comment on. I mean, right now, every item on our agenda, instead of like having the public hearing and closing it and then waiting until audience participation, we're line item, everything, we open it up and ask for, you know, the public's opinion. So, you know, really, that whole thing about the opinion of the chair determining whether or not it's an item that's open for debate, I mean, I think that needs to be looked at. We're either going to allow them to speak on everything or not allow them to speak on anything, and so we should tighten that part of it up.
Okay, I mean, I will say the consent agenda is just for stuff that even we don't debate at all. It's just for like the victualers licenses, those things, to get them quickly through, so we don't spending half an hour on the routine, like, operation stuff.
So there's supposed to be no comment.
Right, there shouldn't be any comment from counselors, right, right. Mm-hmm.
But currently, we're leaving those open. I mean, we actually ask if there's any comment from the public.
There shouldn't be, right.
Okay,
if
so
I've been asking that, I should not.
Yeah, so we need to,
Right,
you know,
just up or
either
down vote.
keep it that way
Right.
and allow it, you know, not allow it, or change it so that it is allowed, because
Right.
really at the end of this, I'm hoping that we have rules that we have voted on that we're gonna work by, and that we police ourselves on, because right now, I mean, there's several other things that I'll point out in here from my perspective on it, is we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. And so, I mean, that's one of the charges that we have been held accountable to. Fiscal items, if a proposal has a direct fiscal impact of $10,000 or more and requires a council vote, in this particular section I said, this is not how items have been handled. For example, recently the discussion was underway pertaining to the cost for moving the garage to the site of the E.T. Smith Hose Company. We did not get a written evaluation of the direct impact of the expenditure from the finance department. So, you know, we had that item that came up. There's been others, and I can't think immediately off the top of my head, but, you know, do we want to change the figure? Do we want to hold to having, you know, a written expenditure like it says we're going to have? So, on the next part of it, under 5, the order of business, all the regular meetings of the town council shall transact other business in the following order. One suggestion that I had was putting audience participation at the beginning, and this is kind of laying the foundation for the other things that I'd say, like to do the call to order, the roll call, the meeting rules, public hearings, and then do audience participation, instead of waiting until the end of the audience participate, you know, to put the audience participation, or leave it to where it's at. And then under the non-agenda items, let's see, I'd written the previous phrase under non-agenda items refers to the action of adding council working rules to the last meeting agenda, and this was several weeks ago, but it's according to the non-agenda items language that's there. It's not only up to the chairman as to what can be added to the agenda for the upcoming meeting.
Could you explain that
So
again?
if you read it, non-agenda items, in the event that a councilor, the town manager, or town staff wishes a matter to be considered at a council meeting that has not been included on the agenda, then that matter in proper form shall be submitted to the town council as far in advance of the meeting as possible, but it may be presented at the meeting. The councilman, the manager, or the staff requesting that the matter be considered shall explain the reason for necessity of consideration at that meeting. And I'm just pointing out that that's not how we've been working. I mean, people have asked for things to be put on the agenda, and again, it depends on whose item it is, or how, this is Lori's opinion, how heavily debated it's going to be as to whether it can go on that agenda or if it has to wait until the next time. So, I mean, just to give thought to the fact that it is there, that items can be added to the agenda, but yet it's almost like a pick and choose as to what is allowed to be added. The meeting length, I was just making comment that, you know, it says 2.5 hours, you know, adjournment on or before 9:30 p.m. We've obviously not been sticking to that. There's been a lot of debated issues, and you know, if we could be mindful of the fact that it should be over by that time. Point of order, I guess. Under the organizational meeting, the council shall conduct an organizational meeting at that time, which we did, but I just wanted to say that we should probably develop a workshop item where the council actually gets together and establishes our goals, because that was one of the things that we had talked about early on, and we had Mr. Garish come here and do the presentation, and I don't think that we've really gone any further on that. And so in order for us to, if we're going to look at council rules and making any, our working rules and making any changes, and to try to, you know, make the best of the job that we're doing for the remainder of the year, it'd be nice if we could sit and at least establish some goals in the order that people think that they're important. Let's see. Under general public comment, section 4A, just tweaking the wording if we in fact were going to change the order of the agenda to being audience participation at the earlier part of it. My thought was that that phrase should read, during the time scheduled for public comment on the regular town meeting agenda, members of the public who are residents and or taxpayers of the town of Lisbon, or authorized representatives of such resident or taxpayer, or in the case of an organization, the only authorized representative of that organization may address the town council regarding only items instead of any items or issues that are on the agenda for that meeting. And then we would end up changing, to be consistent, we would end up changing for C, the public comment generally. Any individual wishing to address the council, that whole sentence is okay. Comments shall be limited to the items on the agenda and to a time period of 5 minutes or less. And then the last line of, or last couple of lines of that, well, not last couple of lines, but where it says, it is not intended nor shall it be construed as an opportunity for debate, I really think that that whole paragraph, or that whole line there, should be underlined for emphasis. I mean, it really shouldn't be an opportunity for debate on all public comments, and we should ask the people in the audience, as well as ourselves, to conduct their comments in accordance with the rules of decorum. Maybe we should bring that up and kind of, you know, highlight the rules of decorum and the Roberts rules. But I also think the section that should be underlined is no public comment shall be allowed which has the effect of embarrassing or attacking the character of any individual or councillor, and this rule shall be liberally construed and strictly enforced. I think that there's many opportunities, both on the part of the councillors and the audience, that you know, there's attack mode going on, and it's, in my opinion, not professional. Then underline the section C, 5C, where it says any councillor may have Following the introduction of the issue, there will be time devoted to any questions of the sponsor or the town manager or staff regarding the agenda item which, and starting with any counselor, underline, any counselor may have, which would help to clarify the question presented by the agenda item. The chair shall allow questions only during this time, and no debate or discussion of collateral issues shall be permitted. I mean, that's something that I think should be underlined and certainly enforced. Section D would have to be changed a little bit, the language to say at the very end, the town of Lisbon, taxpayer of the town of Lisbon to address the council regarding this particular agenda item during the designated public hearing time or during the designated audience participation time. Again, emphasizing that not every item or line item is open for discussion or debate. Now, for additional discussion, and if I'm reading this wrong, if you go into section 6C, and it talks about abstentions, it talks about a counselor abstaining. So it says abstentions on particular items will only be permitted where there is an expressed conflict of interest or other serious matter that precludes the counselor from participating in a voting, it should be and voting on that item. There's a typo there. Where the counselor intends to abstain from participation and voting on a particular item, he shall advise the other counselors present as soon as that item is placed on the floor of his intent not to participate and to abstain from voting and the reasons for that abstention. And it says, once expressing the intent to abstain, the counselor shall have no further participation in that particular agenda item, but then it goes on to talking about participation. It says, an abstaining counselor who wishes to be heard on that matter may join the other members of the public and speak as a member of the public during that portion of the meeting. It appears that that conflicts itself, because even if a counselor opts to abstain from voting or the participation in the discussion, they come down to the podium, they're still a counselor, and people are still going to see their discussion, are they still participating in that? So I don't, if I'm reading that wrong, then please, lead me right, but
No, I think that's how it works. So what are your
either
suggestions
you
for a
abstain
change?
or, if you're abstaining from it and it says that you are not going to participate in the discussion, I don't know why we then give the person the opportunity to come down to the podium. It's either or, in my opinion. Because if they come down to the podium, they can still be very convincing in the information that they present. I mean, I hope you don't mind me picking you out, but if you opted to abstain from something, you come down, you have many years of experience, and you may have some knowledge of the past, and you stand here as a citizen of the community, and you share all of the information you know. I mean, I personally would be apt to say, Mike's been around, he's been a part of these decisions, yep, he's abstaining from it, but your information is still valuable, thus could, sway, so either participate or you don't. And I think it goes back to the fact that we've been elected and we have a right to represent the constituents. So I'm just putting that out there. I think that, decision needs to be made about either you participate or you don't. And I'm not necessarily saying I favor it either way. It just seems like it's a conflict in the way it's worded there.
Well, on the other hand, if you're not going to allow public debate on each agenda item, then you wouldn't be allowed to do that anyway. You'd have to come down at the beginning and talk during the audience participation section if you wanted to speak on that.
On an item that you were
Right, so if you couldn't
abstaining
vote on
from?
something because you were abstaining, you would have had to come and talk earlier because no one would be allowed to use the podium on each question, which is
Yeah,
a
but do you
proposal.
see what I'm saying, though? There's a conflict in there in how it reads. And I just think that it deserves some attention for clarity.
The reason it's written the way that it is that a counselor is elected to do a job, and to abstain from something takes some direct conflict of interest. If there isn't a direct conflict of interest, you should remain on council and continue to go.
Yeah.
And
But
if you lessen that up,
Right.
then people will just abstain from anything for any reason.
Right.
It's acceptable.
Well, no, but I mean, to Lori's point, right, if you elect to abstain, you shouldn't speak on the matter at all.
Right.
Once you make that decision that says, I'm going to abstain from this particular matter, that's it. We shouldn't talk again until after that vote is over and everything is complete. We should talk either at the council chair or at the podium.
So, I mean,
Your extension is set don't want to be part of this discussion because I have a conflict. So whatever I may say could influence the outcome.
Under 7B, staff, I think let me look at 7B again. I've highlighted mine, but our employees are concerned, staff members.
Excuse me.
I don't know why I highlighted that red, but I was emphasizing the town manager shall also be responsible for the orderly conduct of any employees. And I think that that's just one of the things that, sometimes things get a little heated and we don't necessarily hold to that. So it's one of the working rules that I think that we need to abide by as well.
I don't think we've had a lot of problems with employees being disorderly at the meetings. I mean, that would be Steve's job as their supervisor.
It's a
if there were
two-way
problems.
street. If we're going to hold counselors and the people of the public that, responsible, I'm looking down through this, that it's not just picking out select groups. I
Right.
mean, it's in there for a reason, so that should be emphasized as
Right.
well, is the point I was trying to make. Under 7C, there would have to be some language change there about public members attending town council meetings also shall observe the same rules of propriety, decorum, and good conduct. I think that gets waylaid. I mean, if you read further into it, it talks about, if people are unruly and stamping their feet, whistles, yells, and that kind of stuff, they can actually be removed from the town meeting. And there has been some times that things have been pretty heated that I think, again, we should, stick to our rules. They're there for a reason and we need to follow them. All matters discussed during executive session, this is going down to section G. Matters discussed during executive session shall be held in the strictest of confidence by counselors and shall not be discussed with or divulged to any person other than a fellow counselor or persons in attendance at the executive session. I think that some of the information we had discussed in there has eventually gotten out. I mean, I have to tell you that I go down the street and I hear things from people that I know are matters that we have not come out and said anything about. So, again, holding counselors responsible to that. And a reminder that a violation of the confidentiality is malfeasance of office. So I think that we should.
That also pertains to staff.
Right.
The
Correct.
staff is
Yeah,
in
but we
Correct.
went to executive session before and come out in the hall, and people in the hall have already told us that stuff that we did.
And I agree with that. So I think it's one of those things that we need to be aware of.
One thing I want to say as chair is that if you people feel that you have a problem with, I'm not cutting people off, whatever, it is in the rules there. You can make a motion to, require me to enforce the rules if you think that, you disagree with how I'm interpreting that, and, the council can vote on that, so.
I can't kick you
I
because
know.
that would be assault, but I'll nudge you from
Okay,
time
yeah.
to time, okay?
Yeah, right.
And just back on, I've lost track of what section I'm in now.
You're under
We
section
go
7.
back to 7. Okay, so it would be still 7, is it, or did I add another page here? Where does 7 end? Let me look at that one.
7 ends under, which one?
Is the last part of 7 the waiver?
Yeah, yep.
All right, so it goes back into the financial interest for 1, relationship 2, appearance of conflict 3, participation and judgment. Is it
Yeah,
called that
that's
again?
again.
Yeah.
Okay, so then there's a whole nother section again about the where counselors are to be acting in the official capacity, and I just commented that phrase again appears to contradict the other section regarding abstaining, so that would need to be looked at. Those were my comments.
Am I?
Yes, go ahead.
And I've talked to Mark about this in the past, and I know I've talked to Lori. One of the biggest reasons I've been actually pushing to try to do this, to get this meeting, is from something we started at the beginning of the year. We actually had a gentleman come in and actually try to help us, guide us in the way of actually having a real productive council, which unfortunately the last couple of years has been very difficult to have a productive council with a lot of the challenges we put in front of us, and this year seems to be really frustrating. And when we leave at 11 o'clock at night and we actually didn't get more than 5 minutes worth of business done throughout the night, it really doesn't make you feel like coming back in again. And a lot of it is really, I know it's very difficult to be chair and very difficult to turn people off, but unfortunately, a lot of times things just kind of escalate to the point where for every 5 words as council we say, there's 15 to 20 minutes worth of discussion from the public, which is fine if it's a public hearing, but when it gets to be a business meeting, I think we need to handle it that way. You know, talking to Steve and the way a lot of other boards work, some of the planning board meetings I've been to, the planning board actually listens to the public first and then they conduct their meeting. I believe that's the way it's done. Last night we were at a young water meeting, and they chose to do the same thing, listen to the concerns first, get them done, and then actually work into the business meeting after. But I think what Lori's saying is very, to me, is it would make a big change so we could actually get business done. I mean, if you actually stick to the rules and hear public comment first, which they have the right to make comments, which is fine, especially about items that's on the agenda. So when we actually go to discuss those items, we're actually listening to what the public said first. Unfortunately, we do it very backwards now. We have a lot of discussion, and then audience participation comes up after, and they actually maybe say something that would be important to us or not after, so it's really hard to hear them after and actually be able to reflect that when we make a decision as a council. I think once we actually hear their concerns and actually control the atmosphere and the concerns, we take their information in, then we can actually have a business meeting and move forward. One of the things that's been most frustrating with this council, from my part of the council, is the idea that we just come week after week and just get our heads beat against the wall, and really there's not a whole lot of reward at the end. Not saying we took this for reward, but you know, one of the things I've had an opportunity to do is work on the school facility committee, where you actually have a committee and you have a goal, and at the end of the program, when you can see your goal achieved, you feel like you accomplished something. It doesn't feel like you're just wasting a lot of time. Unfortunately, that's one of the things we're really missing as a council is, I mean, it's really hard, as Lori said, after her first year, it's really hard to feel that you've actually been a productive councilor. At the end of the year, you really don't know what you achieved. And sometimes you're actually behind than you were the year before. So I think one of the things we need to do as we actually set goals for our manager, as a council, to me, our goals really need to be really compatible to him. So at the end of the year, we either achieve the goals together, or we can't really pick on Steve for not achieving his goals. If a council, our goals aren't the same thing. You know, so I think at the end of the year, if we set goals and actually build our agenda to meet those goals, at the end of the year, we can even feel we were a productive council. We weren't. The other night, we got beat up pretty bad for not actually getting done some of the ordinances. To be honest with you, it's really hard for us to actually put those on the agenda when our agendas are, you know, 4 or 5 hours long, and when we leave the meeting, we actually haven't talked about anything that's actually productive business, what we need to be doing. We're not really servicing the people that voted for us that way. So I think, in my idea, I think we do need to modify our council rules to the point of, number one, as Lori mentioned before, is the idea of sticking by our rules that we have, the ones that are important as far as making the meeting go smoothly, but also move the participation to the beginning of the meeting. Try to very much control it to the point of having it being productive, not non-productive, you know, input. And then once that's over, work with the meeting and actually do what we can do to actually try to achieve our goals and at least move forward in the idea that we're trying to, you know, make things better. Sometimes we feel like we're just actually putting out fires the whole meeting, and you know, people can actually bang on us for not actually getting a lot done, because we really don't. We don't. We basically, the biggest thing we actually bang out in the year is not banging up a work on is the budget, and we really don't have a choice of that. That's the reason it gets done. I mean, if there wasn't a set goal for getting that done, I'm not sure if it ever happened, you know, really, you know. But again, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that need to be, you know, the idea of setting goals as a council, so we actually have something to achieve, and at the end of the year feel that we've achieved our goals, and then you can actually, and I don't think it ought to be just individual councilors. I think as a council, we need to actually make goals and vote on it. One of the things, actually talking to Mike, and things that we really don't do as a council is actually act as a council. It was really kind of discouraging, and you know, just a prime example, as a council, we actually voted, all 7 of us, to move forward with the bond referendums. We actually voted to have a lawyer spend the time to put it on paper, and then we get out front of a public hearing and we actually vote against the stuff that we already voted for 2 weeks before. So, I mean, it really looks like we're a very dysfunctional council, which we really kind of are in a sense when it comes to that. I mean, if we're a council that votes, 5-2 to move forward on something, I think once that vote's made, that council needs to stand behind that vote and move forward with it. If you disagree with it, that's fine, but you really, to be an active council, you're not gonna get your way every time, but you're still gonna move forward with the majority of the council, what they want. I mean, that's why a majority wins. And I think people need to work with that. And I think that's really, for us to vote to spend money to actually have a lawyer write something on paper, then 2 meetings later vote to actually throw it away, it really doesn't make us look like we're being very good team players, I guess. And again, a lot of it is confusing, and a lot of it's, it's hard to know exactly where we stand a lot of times, but I think that's one thing as a council we need to work on. We need to come together as a group and, determine why we're a council and what our goals are, and take care of the problems as they come up, but also move forward to try to work with our management and team and department heads to make the best opportunity for us to serve the public.
Can I just say one other thing, Mark?
Mark?
Um,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that I know one of the concerns that Larry Fillmore has brought forward in several of the opportunities that he's had to speak at audience participation is that we either don't give an answer at the time or we don't bring an item forward if it hasn't been resolved. And so one of my thoughts about the audience participation is to, set the stage that it's at the beginning of the meeting, people can talk about the things that are on there, and then if an item is brought forward from the audience that they're concerned about or need to know some more information about, it gives us the opportunity to hear what they have to say. We can either respond to it. If the town manager has an answer, he could respond to it. We often call on department heads that are sitting in the audience to respond to it, so it gives an opportunity for it to be either addressed then, or we can make note of it. But I think that we also have the responsibility, and we don't do very well at this, is to bring that item back. I mean, one of the things that he's asked is just to bring it back until the issue is either resolved or there's nothing else that we can do, but bring closure to the item. And so it was my thought that, through either people from the community introducing an idea, we can make note of what their concern is, either address the concern if we're able to do it at that time, or say to them, we'll have to get back to you. But then on the next meeting, we have to do our homework and we have to get back to them to be able to answer that. And if we're not able to, just let them know, what have we done to that point to get answers or to try to resolve things, and that we'll keep it coming forward, because we're losing credibility if we don't do that. And I think it makes people feel like we're brushing things under the carpet. So, sorry, Roger.
No, you hit just what I was gonna say, but, I think we ought to have that same thing before audience participation. If we move audience participation up, we ought to answer the questions that were given to us before audience participation.
You mean to give examples or to give
If they-
information
if
about
they-
the items?
Right, if they had audience participation, if they had questions the time before, and we couldn't answer them,
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah.
before audience participation, we gotta have on the agenda where we answer the questions
Like follow-up.
Right, yeah.
and be a follow-up on it.
You see, the problem is that by moving the audience participation up, if there is things talked about in the meeting that somebody in the audience wants a question about or talk about, they can't talk about it until the next meeting, 2 weeks later. And then, if the agenda has changed and it's not on the agenda, they're not supposed to bring it up again.
The way I
So
want
what
to
you're
see it
doing
is
is you're
always
shutting
the
out the
same.
public.
I want to see it a part of the agenda, so it would be there all the time. We might not have anybody it'd be like Pledge of Allegiance, it would be there all the time. We may not have any questions to answer, so it would just go through, but that would be there, and then there would be audience participation.
What I was getting at, Roger, is say someone comes to the podium and they ask a question.
Right.
If we have the audience participation at the beginning, and then we go into our meeting, and a question arises for a person in the audience that they'd like to speak, they have to wait 2 weeks before they can speak again. And if it's not on the agenda, they can't bring it up. So
But-
what you're basically telling people is, we really don't care what you have to say.
I wasn't.
But if we have audience participation at the beginning, it gives people an opportunity to talk to us, to tell us how they feel on specific items that are on the agenda before we make a vote on them. I mean, there are some things that we vote on, the vote is already done by the council before we go to audience participation, so it's already a done deal. So are we gonna, go backwards? Because now if we've already voted on something, and then the audience speaks about it, and they're outraged about it, they really have information they want to share, we've already voted on it. So then that means if we take into consideration what they say at audience participation, we're bringing an item back to the table next week to say, okay, now we have to reconsider that vote. I mean, I'm trying to do a win-win. I really
Why
want to
couldn't
be
we
able to
go
give the
audience
opportunity.
participation not before the vote?
Yeah.
But not at the beginning. Give them a chance to observe the meeting, so
So-
if they have questions for the,
You wouldn't succeed either way, because if you move it right after consent agenda before we go into council orders, you still haven't solved what you're trying to discuss. I mean, I think if you do move it up front, and you give them the opportunity to speak, we've heard the information. I mean, I like Roger's idea about having some mechanism of follow-up, so that we status that. What I think we have to be careful of is that some of that follow-up requires a vote. It really needs to be under agenda, under our council orders and resolutions. So I
Just-
think,
yeah, just something so every
those
week-
follow-up items have to be placed in the appropriate thing. But to me, what I think would help us is if after each meeting, we were given a list, whether it comes from Twyla listening at the tape, or whether Steve took the right notes or whatever, and provided us a list of all the actions of what was brought up in the audience participation, of things that we need to go research, right? I mean, a lot of it's gonna probably require staff to go do and get a resolution and come back to, which then have to come back to us. I'm not guaranteeing it would necessarily get on the next meeting, right? Because some of the information may have to come back to us that we have to discuss before we can then decide what approach we want to take with that. So we might want to discuss some of these action item follow-ups under other business, right? I think that's what, other business. Go through those, get the information back from staff based on whatever research, whatever was needed, and then from that point forward, we can say, okay, it needs to go on to the next agenda item so we can take a vote, or we can elect as a council, based on our discussion, to then take a vote on it at that point in time and address it.
As long as the questions somehow get answered.
Right,
Right. But
You know,
I
and
mean, there's no
even-
reason why we couldn't put on other business,
whatever the
counselor
topics are.
action following.
Yeah.
And we'd have to list out the items that are there, and depending on the timing and how long things take, some of them we may have information on, and some of them we can say are still in process, and the rest of them are, here's what we found out, or got factor information. Provide that back.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think where you were making a suggestion there that we do want to be careful of is that we don't want to have people come back and beat us up for half an hour about some item that we have the information for, but now we haven't given it out to them because it comes later in the meeting. I think that's the thing. Maybe we want to have, informational follow-up in there before audience participation. If we have, if somebody asked us, how many employees do we have, so we didn't know, then we could come back the next week and say, okay, we've got, 100 people, and then they won't beat us up again for, an hour about that question when we could have answered it 5 minutes ago.
Well, so what I hear people saying is they're in agreement with the changing of the order of business, if you will, to include, to keep the audience participation. I'm not advocating to get rid of that, but again, we have to somehow get to follow up and then allowing the audience to participate, to have some say in it. My point is that audience participation at the end sometimes comes after we've already made some votes that they don't necessarily like, so I don't think it's placed appropriately as it is now. And then we also need to be very clear that there are things that the audience will say that we may not have the answer to at that time. But I think that we need to keep bringing it back until we have an answer that we're all satisfied with and go forward.
if
But
that's.
somehow, some way, I mean, give a suggestion on how you think that this should be. It's obvious we gotta change the order.
That would work, Lori, under one stipulation, is that you come out with an agenda on Thursday afternoon or Friday morning, and that agenda is the agenda, and anything after that comes on the following week or 2 weeks later.
Okay, and-
None of this
You can't do that, you can't do
But-
that 100%, Roger. I understand your point, but there are gonna be things that come up at the last minute that require action, which is why we have in the rules to allow it to be brought up either at the meeting, right? It could be an item that any one of us have, right? That we learned about over the weekend, right? That we think is important enough that needs to discuss. So we've got to have an opportunity at the meeting to bring that up in front of council and explain why it's important to us, and then let council decide whether or not we want to take any action on it at that meeting. Same is true for, you know, things similar to, and I know maybe the fire department issue isn't the exact one to use, but, you know, they find information out at the 11th hour, and they have an opportunity to do things in the best interest of the town, right? And could lose that opportunity if council isn't willing to recognize that at that meeting. So I think as good counselors, we need to be receptive to listening to their points, whether it's council's points, staff's points, and then actively discuss it and make a decision as to whether or not we want to act on it at that meeting.
And what you're saying, Roger, about not putting anything else on there, if that is how we were to decide to go with our council working rules, the other sections need to be changed. Because it does talk about being able to add
Right.
things to the, to
Right.
the agenda.
The point that I'm gonna bring up is that if people look at an agenda and they see nothing on the agenda item that is of their interest or that they have an interest in, and then something is put on there at the final moment,
That they may have interest
they
in.
would have had interest in, they miss out on it. And then one of it doesn't get to the website or published to the public.
And I recognize that point, but we are not gonna make 8,000 or 9,000 citizens happy every meeting.
Oh, if you have 3 or 4 people.
We're not gonna do it right, so there's always gonna be things. You can have any agenda you want publicized 2 weeks in advance, right? You've gotta be receptive to changes to it, and because it's the nature of how we have to do our business, and the nature of how the things happen in municipal government that require us to take action.
And I hear you very clearly, Mike, but you've also got to take into consideration that not too many meetings ago, 1 or 2 meetings ago, there was an agenda that was put out and accepted by the chair, and then on come time for the meeting, the agenda had been changed without even the recognition of the chair. I don't think that's right.
Okay, and I think we addressed that, didn't we? I think we acted on it
Yeah,
appropriately
we
as council,
ended up tabling it.
right?
Yep.
The chairman said, this wasn't on my agenda,
Mhm.
that I approved, we're not gonna address this, and council agreed with that. I mean, that's what we do, there's nothing wrong with that. in my mind.
Why couldn't we have something in the agenda that says that we have an item that has come up for discussion, but it will be discussed at our next meeting, rather than I said our already written agenda?
Because there may be time constraints on some of this stuff. I mean, you can't sit here and think of every potential situation.
I mean, think about a pump station, or a pump at
Yeah.
the
Right.
sewer department. If that goes down, that's something that they may, limp along over the weekend. The agenda's already developed, and I don't mean to beat this to death, but the fire department issue, and, I mean, those are the most recent ones. So those are items that may come up for discussion that can't wait for 2 more weeks.
The problem is, Lori, is that what it shows to me is that it does not give people a good feeling when they see the agenda. When they see the agendas constantly changing, like our agendas have, over the last 2 or 3 years, have changed constantly. What that does is that gives the impression that they're trying to do something under the radar.
Well, I'll speak for myself on the council working rules, asking to have that be on the agenda. I did speak with Fernie about it, and we put for that to be in. There wasn't a response to it about adding it to the agenda, and I said, go ahead, forward with it. I mean, if I look at the council working rules, it says, as a counselor, I can add an item to it. And we did exactly what I thought the working rules said. When we came to the meeting, you voiced your displeasure about it. We felt like we needed more opportunity. We needed a workshop. I'm quite all right with tabling it and doing it in a workshop. I mean, I don't think that we're trying to do anything undermined or underhanded.
I didn't say a word, I said it gives the perception.
Well, and again, I would say that, 7 of us are, responsible to look at the items that are on there. There are going to be things that are going to come up that isn't going to go out in an agenda, in print, such as, you know, a pump at the sewer department, or, you know, things will come up.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
I mean, one thing even for that, I mean, that item that was put on the agenda, there was a couple of different reasons. It was talked about well ahead of time, it wasn't a last minute thing. I just spoke to Lori, Roger was actually coming in to speak on it to the town manager that week. There was a lot of input. Unfortunately, a lot of times from the chair, there's not a lot of guidance to the town manager. Sometimes it's, I mean, some weeks you probably may not even review it or actually give approval to it, right?
I usually do.
But I mean, there's been weeks where you might not even responded to Steve on yes or no about an agenda, which is frustrating as a counselor when I actually speak to Steve and say, Steve, has Mark been in to go over this? Is there something we can add on? You mean, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But again, that's one of your responsibilities as a chair that makes you have more time dedicated than we do.
On the other hand, I do have a phone, and I've had situations where I haven't been called, and, you know, I mean, I can't be expected to know.
On the same token, Mark, one of the things that really discouraged me about that meeting, and it's one of the things that we got to talk about in meeting rules, is you actually voiced your opinion that you were concerned about being on the agenda. You knew where it came from, okay, right? I mean, you sent the email to Steve, and Steve responded back to you. The only person you really responded that email back to was Roger, evidently, because Roger said, I seen the email. I have a phone, you have my phone number. This is 4 days ahead of the meeting. As a chair, you could at least get on the phone and say, Kern, you know, I have a concern about that. Maybe you got there after I did, maybe you didn't. Would it be possible we just table it? Again, communication is key, but as a chair, if you can't pick up the phone and talk to me as a counselor and just say you have a concern about it, and just handle it, I mean, we actually hung Mike out to dry about emails. I mean, and Roger's in this public meeting saying, well, I've seen all the emails that Mark sent back to Steve, and I was never forwarded on any of those, and they were actually talking about me. So, I mean, as a chair, are you actually doing anything different than that we actually point fingers at Mike for, you know?
Yeah. Actually, just to clarify that, I found a change in the agenda.
Yeah.
And asked Mark what the change was.
Yeah.
I made the phone call or the email, what was the change for? He said, I don't know, I wasn't aware there was a change. That wasn't like he.
Well, you commented at the meeting that I seen the emails that Mark wasn't
Well,
happy about the
what it
change.
was, that Mark-
I just sent him a
He
draft
emailed-
copy, the one that I approved.
Exactly, but,
Right.
you know what I mean, it's just one of those things where, you know, it comes down to the idea of just a lack of communication. You mean, if you have a concern, if I was to go in on Tuesday and there was a concern when I went in, it would be, to me, only respectful as a chair to be able to use the phone as you commented to Steve and say, hey, look, you know, I have a problem with this item. Do you mind if we just table it and take it off the agenda? I wouldn't have a problem. People say, well, geez, why are we doing it here? It's probably the biggest audience we've had forever. We had, what, 40 or 50 people in the audience, so I don't really see talking about this 150 people hiding the fact. You know what I mean? I thought it was probably one of the best opportunities to talk about our meeting rules when we have the most people in front of us to listen. But again, this is fine, and I have no problem with it. It's just, we have a council that works, you know what I mean? And one of the things is if there's a concern by anybody, that we're all informed of what's happening, and it's not just one of those things where it's not that we're working together, that's all.
Mark,
Yes, go ahead, Gina.
I just have a few things to kind of work with all of what we've been talking about. I think generally when a citizen arrives at a meeting, something has perked their interest. There's a reason why they're here. And in my opinion, as a citizen, it's their responsibility to call us. And I harped on this a million times before. I feel it's their responsibility to contact Steve, contact myself, contact the rest of us, and to, you know, generally the people that come are people that are interested, sometimes not for the best, but they're interested in what we're talking about. And I do think that it's their responsibility to a degree to contact somebody and say, hey, what's this item you're talking about? What's going on there? You know, is this going to cost the town a lot of money, or is this an emergency situation? I think that it would be their responsibility to contact us, let us know that. And also, we are elected officials. I think we forget that sometimes. We are elected by the people of this town, and as sad as it may be, sometimes we have to make hard and fast decisions. We have to make things happen. Once again, sorry to pick on the fire department, but that was something that came up. It was something that it was time sensitive. It needed to be taken care of. And I don't feel that we were trying to run under the radar with anything like that. As Bert just said, you know, if there are 50 people sitting in the audience, they certainly see what we're doing, and it's not like we're trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. I like to keep the agendas when we get an agenda, I like to stick to it, but there are times that things do come up, and it has happened a few times, but generally the things that have been on there have been low impact fiscal type things. We can't vote on huge things that cost us lots of money. So I think when we look at that, I think that we're doing the best we can to keep the agenda, but when those things do arise, that is our job, and they can reprimand us for it after if we've done a horrible job in making the decision, but that's my opinion, and I think should happen.
So what would the recommendation be if, I mean, it sounds like to me, and I could be corrected, but it sounds like to me that people are in agreement that the order of business, the agenda itself, should be changed? What would people say is the order to do it in?
Well, I mean, I would agree with putting the audience participation up under public hearing, after public hearing. And I think we should add something in whether we do it in front of that audience participation or whether we do it underneath our other business. We should add something into the agenda that addresses our responsibility as staff and council to follow up on actions that were given by the public.
I didn't realize this was done, but I was told by somebody that watches our meetings a lot that when Chief Brooks was acting town manager, that it seemed like every time somebody asked him a question or there was a question asked, he came back the following time with an answer.
Yep.
Every time.
Yep.
So it can be done.
Yeah, it absolutely can be done.
And that, you know, even though some people don't like Chief Brooks, that they like that. So.
So maybe move other business up under public hearings?
No, I wouldn't say move other business, because we do other things in
Right.
other business.
Okay.
We go through the financial reports, we have, people come in that want to talk to us, like smart meters and.
Okay, so then under public hearings, before audience participation, do follow-up?
Public
You
follow-ups.
can either make a separate line item for
That's what I
public
do.
follow-up, or you can add it as a line item under other business. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I'm just thinking that if we don't do the public follow-up before the audience participation, we could get, somebody said it, we could get beat up for
Right.
30 minutes, or not that we would, because it's still limited 5 minutes, but, I mean, we could get beat up about not following up on an
Not if
item,
it's
but
on our
yet.
agenda. Not if it's listed on our
Okay.
agenda, right, that
Yeah.
says we're gonna follow up on these items.
And Mark, man,
Yes.
one of the things that I see happening in school meetings that makes a lot of sense is it's one of the first functions, besides the idea of roll call and stuff, is the chair asks the manager, or whoever's running the meeting, is there any additions or changes to our agenda? And if so, what about now? Because if a counselor has something they want to bring up, they should know it when they start the meeting.
Yeah.
And at that point in time, if it is brought forward right at the beginning, if there's any changes, whether it's from a counselor or from Steve, then the person would have an opportunity to make a comment of it in the
Yeah.
public. So we wouldn't be going through the meeting talking about anything. Basically, it would have been the idea of, Mark would ask Steve, is there any changes to the agenda? And Steve said there would have been one. There's a possibility for the fire department to have an opportunity. He could describe what the change was. And then if someone came up from public comment, they could have made a comment before we went into our discussion. So it does leave an opportunity for any new business to be discussed, right?
Would it be way out of the realm of possibilities, when an agenda is made up by the town manager and the chair before it is approved, electronically send us a copy, and if we have something that we'd like to comment on, we could do it, just to probably save you guys time. I mean, electronically, you guys can send stuff so quick, it's just, I mean, look, it's no big deal, and if we look at it, we say, oh geez, I think Mike forgot, overlooked this or something, we could.
Kind of what happened last time, Roger, and it was added, and unfortunately it came back on.
Do it
You know.
in the timeline, do it in the proper timeline. Do it before Steve and Mark agree to it, and then have it done with. You know, on Thursday night,
I don't-
have our.
It's hard though, because I'll tell you, when I was council chair, right, sometimes I would have to meet Wednesdays, sometimes I would have to, right, I mean, the town manager typically knows what he needs to have on the agenda and bring before council, a week or so in advance, but there's always things that are pending and need to be finalized, right? So my goal as councilor was to come in every Thursday and meet with the town manager and review that agenda, because part of the things I wanted in the packet, based on the line items that were gonna be in the agenda, was I wanted the appropriate backup information so that when council got their packet on Friday, they could review their packet and they had information that helped them understand the item that was going to be discussed, right? Rather than you just get a packet and an agenda and, well, what is this really about? You know, why all of a sudden are we talking about street lamps or something like that, right? So put together some information behind it that would help you guys or all of us understand what that item's for, right? So I tried to religiously meet every Thursdays, right, with the prior town managers and our current town manager, and set that agenda. But as I said, sometimes work schedules, whatever happened, and I'd have to try and do it on a Wednesday, right, or something like that. Or I'd have to say, you know what, I'll have to come in Friday morning, right, and address it Friday morning before I go to work or something, right, and take that approach, right? So it's not all 100% cut and dry. And we as counselors have lives to live, we have jobs we have to do, and we have things that come up. So you can't always set everything cast in concrete. You've got to try and do it as best you can and try to set a set of guidelines that you want to live by, but you got to understand that there's going to be exceptions to it, right? So, I mean, that's all I'll say about that, because I think that's important that the chairman and the manager get together to discuss the agenda and get it approved, right? Sometimes you may need to do that electronically, just based on what's going on that week or whatever, but you need to get together, you need to meet on a regular basis. I used to set up, I'll be in at, 4:30 or 5 o'clock every Thursday, and we'll go through the packet, right? And talk about what's in there. Try to do it on Thursdays, because if there's more additional stuff you want added to the packet as the chairman to support council, staff has time to go do it over Friday so that your packets are available for you on Friday evening. Just my 2 cents worth on that.
I mean, realistically, the agenda's never going to be perfect, and we just have to try to, work with each other. And I'll try to be better in terms of getting it out to everyone and making sure people have the right input they want. But you have to be understanding.
I think it.
But again, it's also our responsibility, if we have something, to
Right.
get to either you or Steve, right? Because when you guys
Right.
meet, Steve can say, well, I heard from Fern, or I heard from Lori, or I heard from Roger, either Roger, and they have brought these items up to me. Do you want to put these on the agenda to discuss, right? Or we can call you directly, or send you an email, or whatever, if we have something that we want on that agenda. Just as much as our responsibility to get to you, as the manager, so that you guys can do your job and your responsibilities as chair and town manager.
Just to say, packets have been pretty decent. There's very decent information.
I think Steve does a good job with that.
Yeah,
And
I don't think there's anything
compliment
lacking
on
here.
that.
I would also say that I think by locking yourself into sending out an electronic draft version to everybody to ask about that is kind of micromanaging a little bit. I mean, that's why he's the chair.
Yeah,
I
but the thing
mean,
of it is, Laurie, is that what I was thinking about,
Yeah.
it came out different than what I wanted it. But my intention was that Mark is our chair, and he's only going to be as good as we make him as
Mhm.
council. And if he overlooks something, if Steve overlooks something, and one of us grab it, it's only going to make him and Steve look that much better when they get to the top. That's was the cut, what I was looking at. I wasn't looking at micromanaging what they put on the agenda.
Right, I think, what happened there with the Ferns item was just we missed each other in the night kind of thing. It wasn't anyone intending to get the other one. It was just, I saw one and then, there was change made to the draft and I didn't see it. I think I was actually down here talking to Steve at the time, so, I missed it. I don't
It
think
doesn't take
anyone's
much
trying to
time
get
for
anyone else.
anybody, any of you, to send me a quick email if it's something that you want. I respond to my emails the same day I get them. And if it's something that needs to go on the agenda, we put it in the folder for that meeting, and then we start going over it on that Monday. So we try to get all our data together.
If we could try to have any requests in by the end of the day, Thursday at least, if you have Friday, Monday requests, those are gonna make odd situations there, so if we can avoid that, it's better. I mean, one issue we need to discuss here is if we're gonna move audience participation to the beginning of the meeting, then we have to decide is it only going to be that people are allowed to talk about things that are on the agenda, or, no, are people not gonna be allowed to bring up anything else at all?
I think under audience participation, my philosophy is they should be able to talk about anything they want.
And I agree with
Within
that.
the confines of the agenda
Mhm.
and through the appropriate decorum, right?
Mhm.
They should be able to bring up anything they want, because, we're not gonna know everything that they want,
Mhm.
right? Unless they call us or whatever, but for them to bring something up that we haven't heard about or thought about, or potholes here and there, or trees down someplace that we haven't seen, whatever, I think that's okay, right? For them to bring it up, and then it's an action for us to continue to follow up on. So, I don't have a problem with it being, right, in there, but I think what we have to try and do is restructure this so we can get business done, is by putting the audience participation up front and addressing our follow-up someplace, then we don't have any comment during the rest of our meeting from the public, and we go about and carry on our business, right? And that allows us to get through the stuff that we need to get through. Doesn't mean that the upfront audience participation still might be a little bit long, but as long as we hold people to their timelines, and as long as we follow those rules, right? Then we've given everybody their chance to speak on the agenda items or anything else. We've addressed the follow-up, and then we go about executing our meeting.
Makes sense to me. Roger?
Howard, do we really have, or do you really think it's time at a council meeting for recognition of employees, recognition of whatever? We have recognition, a new system for recognition in town, when we have a night for all kinds of recognition in the town. Why are we taking time out of a council meeting to recognize? Why don't we ball this all up into one recognition, even if we do it twice a year, 3 times a year?
What did we do
But-
for recognition?
But isn't so much for employees. I mean, what we did last week as far as for recognizing a good deed in our community, is, to me, that is part of our,
That should be
that's
part
part
of
of our
it.
duties. You mean, it doesn't,
That should be part of a council meeting.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
There should be an
That's no
opportunity, there should be a
And then
location.
the recognition night that you're talking about, it's not televised, so,
Televised.
But it's
What I'm
for,
trying to say is, have a night for recognition item.
but that's for
And have
employees,
it
not for the
for
citizens.
all types of recognition.
But this was a citizen, this was one of our fellow citizens that was recognized by a number of volunteer organizations for the efforts that they performed in improving our town. Right?
And I agree
So,
with that, and I'm not picking on
I
that.
see no reason why that should not be done in a council meeting. I think council should have probably participated more as part of that and been part of that whole recognition procedure.
Going back
Right?
even,
I mean,
yeah.
these things get brought to us, and what we should be stepping on and saying, hey, what can we do as well? Can we provide a plaque? Can we do something to be part of this recognition? Why did it have to be just those emergency areas? I mean, that person did something great for the town of Lisbon, right? Why shouldn't we be part of that recognition for these citizens? I mean,
And I agree with you, Mike. What I'm trying to say is that we're trying to get stuff done in a meeting, and I think that if we had, even if we did it once a month, and had the council have a special night, a Thursday evening, to just give recognition for people in the town. Because we have a lot of people that do things good in this town that should be recognized and aren't. And we could use these meetings for that type of thing, televise it, and broadcast it to the town, and this is what's going on in your town, as a goodwill thing. And then use our time in our council meeting for council meeting. I'm not trying to,
I understand, I guess maybe I'm not ready to take on another meeting, right? And for the amount of time it takes us in that meeting for that type of recognition.
Well, the reason.
And I don't know about the timing of those types of recognitions either. I mean, I don't know, I mean, sometimes it's very difficult to get all those different organizations that want to, participate in all this together at one time. They know we have, our meetings the first and third Tuesdays of every month, and they want to bring that in front of us in the town. I just think that's a good thing.
I want to say, I think there may be some difficulties too with getting a time slot on the Great Falls TV if we're having extra meetings.
I think if you go even looking back at the school board meetings, they actually have, I think, a location on the meeting for good deeds and recognition.
they do.
It takes possibly 5 to 10 minutes,
Yeah.
but it's there, it's a time slot in every meeting, whether it's there or not, and it's always a good part of the meeting because it's actually going over good stuff, and it takes very little time. It really does. If it's, but again, it all comes down to how it's portrayed. I mean, if you actually go by our rules, as Lori said, for even audience participation would actually be very controlled. We would get the information without actually, getting, counselors pointed at and actually giving, items being discussed that we really have no control over, or actually have even an opportunity to discuss. I mean, if someone comes forward to us and actually starts questioning about a town employee, that's really not, that should be stopped even before it gets going, because it really doesn't have anything to do with our meeting that we can control. So if you actually go by the audience participation rules, I think it'd be very controlled, and the idea is same thing with, good deeds and recognition. I mean, most of that doesn't take very long. It really doesn't, if you have a place to meet before.
I mean, I think if we're running into an issue with, time regularly, it might be something to look at, trying to trim it, but I don't see that there's an issue really at the moment.
I think that's up to the chair to control, because none of it's gonna come up by surprise. They're
Right.
gonna contact you well ahead of time, so yeah, exactly. So between you and Steve, I mean, I think you can control the length of time that's gonna be, and if there's too much, you just put it to the next meeting, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's what we usually try to do.
So we're gonna move audience participation up after public hearing. We're gonna put follow-up underneath other business,
I'll come up with something there, a little bit,
Yeah.
and then,
public follow-up.
and I would suggest on that agenda for public follow-up, you list the items that are being followed up on. So
Mhm.
people know
That's a good
when the
idea.
agenda goes out, wherever it's publicized, those are the items that are follow them.
When a question is given at the podium, do we have to follow on a number, a label, or so they know that their item can be straight?
If it's something we can follow up on, I think there has to be a mechanism there for us to actually inform the person that we're not gonna get a follow-up on, and we don't have the opportunity to, because it's not.
And there are times when a question gets asked that I can respond to that person, either electronically or through the mail, and answer their question, or call them the next day. That happens quite frequently.
There are a lot of questions that are brought up in meetings that if they call you up, you can answer it in 5 minutes and be
Yeah.
done with it. But the meeting is, you're not in a position to really go look something up, so it's
That's
always the
right.
best place to ask for information. He doesn't bite if you go in to see him.
And so I think if we do that, I think we also have to remove section, under 6, 5 is regular meeting, emergency meeting, section 4, I guess, where it starts public comment, and then 4B needs to be removed.
We'd have to change 4A to say that is or is not on the agenda, or just cross out that whole bit, regarding any item or issue.
Regarding only items.
Because right now it says
Right.
4B, the end of it. 4A says, may address the town council regarding any item or issue that is not on the agenda for that meeting. So you just remove that is not on the agenda for that meeting. See what I'm saying, Lori? You have 4B.
The authorized representative of that organization may address the town council regarding any item.
Yeah, you already have corrected that, I see. Okay.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, even just take it off right afterwards, that after issue. So it says any item or issue, and then just cross out that is not on the agenda for that meeting. So it's obviously, that's the point, is they can address the agenda items or anything else.
Right. Yep.
Thank you.
And you gotta make some of the same modifications to section C. And the underlines that were discussed.
Which I can send. I mean, I can send that in the
Yeah.
workup format.
Yeah. All right. Sounds like we've got a pretty decent consensus
What
there.
I'll do is I'll draft something up for you, get it all out to you
Mhm.
for the end of the week, so you can respond back to me.
Okay. We can,
As far as changes to this? or
Changes
the
to this
agenda?
and the agenda. You want
Okay.
both or just?
Because you're gonna send.
I was
your-
gonna say, why don't I just send it to you, because I got already some of the changes in there, and then you guys can just tweak it however, and then send it out from there.
And I'll
I mean,
send you a draft
No
of what
sense
the
to
agenda
reinvent the
will
wheel.
be.
I'll take my own commentaries out.
okay. All right, any further discussion on this issue? Okay,
Also,
Frank?
we actually, we talked about ongoing workshops that we
Mhm.
need to do. And we actually set a workshop in the future for us to sit back as a council and actually discuss what our goals would be and at the same time go over what the goals are for the manager and actually see if they actually kind of work in parallel and make sure they're working together on the same path. I mean, because it is tough when we get to the end of the year and we say, why did we do this?
Right.
Council really hasn't set any direction for it.
Mhm.
If we don't set a direction for the manager, it's really hard to tell me he went in the wrong direction if we don't give him a path to go on, or at least some type of guidance. So I think that'd be a workshop by itself, the idea of just reviewing the manager's goals and the idea of seeing what our own goals would be.
So when would you like to do that, Fran? Would you like to, after we're done the budget, would be a good time?
Hopefully the budget be done soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what the council wants to do as far as for workshops. I mean, whether we do one a month or whatever you want to do, but, I mean, just actually set some type of working plan, that's all.
I think once you have a meeting and you set goals that you'd like to see me accomplish in conjunction with what your goals are for council to accomplish, once those goals are set, we can start doing strategic planning, looking towards the future based on comprehensive plan, based on your divisioning sessions that we have. That's another whole process that we really,
Right.
once the budget's done and as we get into the fall maybe, we could start really addressing those before the budget process. And I've already asked staff to start looking at their strategic planning, things that they think they need to accomplish from their departmental view, and then tie it all in together.
I do think it would be a good idea to have like one workshop in one schedule. And, you know, we don't need to use it, because I think, I mean, we got a lot of ordinances we still need to do, we've got a lot of things, and I think having workshops on some of those items first, so the council can hear their thoughts and discuss them all, will help us be more cohesive when we get into meetings, right? And work better as a group to get through that.
We've done that with the planning board, and I found that to be very, very helpful.
Yeah, we would like to just plan on like the second Tuesday, you know, in between our two meetings. Because we do the first and third, plan the second Tuesday every month.
Well, I mean,
unless we
what
don't
you
need
really
it.
could do is, depending on your agenda schedules and what's on your agenda, if things start to go smoother than what they have been going, I would think you could have on either the first or the third, you could have a split agenda, where you have a small agenda to get through the
Yeah, we had
main
talked about
items,
doing
and
that
then you
before.
set yourself up with a workshop
Mhm.
type deal for the second half of the meeting or whatever, so that we
Right.
can.
We can never really plan on it, because we never know how long the audience participation will be, and we.
Keep it under.
I will try, I'll do my best, but you never know, 50 people show up and want their 5 minutes each, you know.
You know, when we did the comprehensive plan back in 2007, there was a big number of ordinances that were supposed to be changed. We haven't touched on a single one.
They've all been changed, except the land use
Well,
ordinance and the.
we've touched most of them.
We've touched most of them.
There was others that I know that I'd have to go back, pull my paperwork, I got all that stuff. I got to take it out for it. I'll have to go back and pull the information, but there was a lot of stuff that was in, at the time, Avcon had brought to our attention that they had to change this, we had to change that, we had to look at it. And
John Maloney's been going through the list that he had even prior to me coming. So they've been methodically going through and making the adjustments, and the planning board has been reviewing all those changes. And most of the ordinances that were addressed have been they're all done except the land use ordinance and the wildlife protection. I think those are the only two we have left, right?
we voted on every one of them?
Yeah.
No, the access.
Oh, the access management wasn't on the list. That was something that was presented to us from the DOT and AMCO.
That's Thursday, right?
Mark, may I ask, one of the things that would be really good too, I think, moving forward is with these workshops is, we tend to only have workshops with other committees if there's a fire burning. I mean, it'd be nice to have like a regular, whether we say we have one workshop a year out of budget season with the school committee and the water board. I mean, it'd just be nice. I mean, the other night did workshop, but to me, it was one of those things where we touched on a lot of things that if we were talking regularly, it wouldn't have been so much of an issue. I mean, and same with the school board. I mean, go to a lot of meetings, and there's a lot of different opinions, and really the only opinions are because no one really sits down and talks. So whether or not, again, I mean, we're putting in a lot of workshops, but I think it's the idea of it's only going to be good to us if we know what's going on with the rest of the committees and departments or whatever. The more information we get, the better, that's all.
You could set those up quarterly, that's one of the things that we used to do. Is we had quarterly meetings with other groups like the school board or other towns that were participating in our school district at the time. And those are really good. We could do that. Each group would take responsibility. Maybe during the summer you'd have a barbecue. You know, we've done that here where we cook outside and you could sit down and talk while you eat.
Without having a fire burning, you mean, so you're not sitting at a table getting ready to throw with each other?
Makes it more cordial.
Absolutely.
Is it possible for everybody to just to give an idea, not so much right now, but eventually, we're coming to the end of budget season and just maybe give an idea what they'd like to see discussed? I mean, for me, strategic planning is very important. Others have expressed other things, and that way we can maybe plan at least 4 or 5 months in advance. I think the whole year would be the best, but, so we would kind of know what's coming up.
Yep, that makes sense.
Just send me your thoughts of what you'd like to do and I'll put it on a list. And we'll compile it and I'll get it out to all of you.
Sounds way too organized.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it very much.
Anything further? All right, well, we will draft something up and, yep, we'll deal with that at our next meeting. So now on to budget discussion, the fun part.
Can you turn the air up a little bit? I don't know. if I'm-
Well, the fan was running, so
Yeah.
nobody could get it.
I thought it was me just having a hard time.
No,
You're too young for that.
Oh, no.
How research, not how.
That's it.
That's right.
As I say, one extreme to the other. We just got that 50 days of rain, and now we're actually moving into, the sun comes out one day, so our days in the 40 degrees today.
All right, so what concerns and issues do we still have with the presented budget? Anyone want to talk on anything?
Maybe worthwhile for Steve to explain what papers we have and what changes he made. I mean, that may be a starting point.
Okay, well, we'll start with the first change was made under the elected officials. We took Mike's recommendation and we put it under wages, which was $12,500. And that's the adjustments for the first half of the year, first year, look at it again next year.
and not to be, the 12,500 seems low.
It was
That was 14 that you had.
14.
Well, I had 13 now.
Oh, that's because of the administrative assistant's position. We-
Going into
the TIF.
With money? Okay. Now, I did want to bring up one other item, council, on this. I overlooked a portion of this when we went through this analysis, at least in my mind. All of the positions, except for one, are existing positions where people were being brought up to their normal average wage, okay? But due to the reorganization structure and everything, and with the retirement of solid waste, the solid waste operations manager position is really a new position. The person taking that position is not an existing employee in that position. So I'm not sure that that should follow the same logic as what we talked about, trying to bring people up to their average pay. And so the delta there would be an additional I think, $1,229.
Under solid waste.
It would be, you would add that to the 12,500. So that would be, and actually, I would almost promote that you just add that in as the wage line and take it out of everything. You can do it either way. If it's easier to put it in with the elected official wages, the way we've done it, all I'm saying is I think we should account for that full increase. Only because it's not one of the existing positions that we're trying to meet and bring up to some type of average. So I would make that suggestion to council based on $1,229 is what hurt it in total. And I think it's the appropriate thing to do based on how we're looking at this.
Solely depending on your numbers, be 100% accurate, so if you want to change them, that's fine.
So it'd be 13,729 under wages on the,
Yes, because you'd add the $1,229 to that.
Either there or under solid waste.
I'll probably
Either
add
way.
it to the wages
Yeah,
under
you
solid
can
waste
do,
since it'll be a
if
wage
you do it,
adjustment.
if you're gonna do it under solid waste, then you gotta take out the 526 out of the 12,500.
Yes.
And you're gonna put the full amount of,
Yes.
$1,755 into the
Right.
solid waste operations manager as the wage increase.
Makes sense.
That's still over the 2-year period, right? So
No,
it'll be-
no, the operations
14%.
manager gets the full amount,
Full amount.
because it's a new position.
Okay.
That
I
was
just
something
wanted
I
to
hope,
clarify.
I didn't think about when I was going through the analysis. So therefore, the rest of them would be over the 2-year period.
Okay.
So which figure is it?
So the figure would be, you'd be reducing
elected officials.
you'd be reducing elected official lines 5110 by $526. And you'll be increasing solid waste, which
11,974.
I believe is
03310, 5310, 5110.
Right.
By 175.
I'm assuming that's under 5110?
Yes.
That wage is under 51. So you'd increase that one by $1,755. So the net change for the budget is $1,429.
Mike, what was the number again? I'm sorry, for solid waste.
Solid waste under 03310, under 5110 wages,
Yep.
you would increase the 67,600 by 1,755.
So that makes it the 13,729?
No.
No, and then, I don't have the calculator, but
Calculator in my
It,
head's not working.
it actually, are you talking about the first page elected officials?
Yeah.
The 12,500 will be adjusted to 11,974. Would be,
Increase it $1,755.
69,355.
Yes.
Would it be
We also, just
Just so you know, the number's gonna be a little different. With the removal of all these wage increases to a wage line under elected officials, everybody was put back in to receive a 1.75 wage increase. So it won't be an actual
Oh.
1,755 increase
Okay,
to
it'll
solid
be
waste. It'll
minus
be
the
less.
1.75 less than that.
Yes.
less than that, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Oh, good.
So it'll be slightly less than
Yes.
that.
To catch
Do
that
you understand that,
dot.
Don? Okay.
I guess.
What you're saying is all the people who were saying are also like this.
No,
No,
they're
they're
not
not
also,
yet.
because
So
you guys
$18
wanna have a
less.
workshop
So,
on
see,
who
what happened?
and how the wage adjustments are going to happen.
Right.
Everybody was put back in at a 1.75, so, and that's why you see a little difference in the number.
Right.
Because I had accounted for 1.75 for everybody, so that when you decide to give out these wage adjustments, it will be reduced. The
By
amount
that.
you can give can be reduced by the 1.75 that I didn't feel it was fair to take out the wage adjustments with these people and not give them a 1.75 and then have you turn around and say, well, we don't want to give a wage increase to that person this year.
So
Or
is
that
that why,
position, I should
is
say.
that why it's, so with the movement of the, part of the administrative
Right.
assistant into economic, and the fact that you accounted for 1.75, that made the 12.5 number?
Yes.
So the 12.5, the original number that we had, which was roughly 13,901, you reduced it by 1.75 to adjust for those people's increases.
Yes.
So every one of those positions is in the budget you just gave us.
Everybody's
Has
position,
so the
1.75.
recreation director, the park
Has a
ranger, and everyone has a 1.75.
yes.
But we'll back that out
Right, so you back, well,
One
you don't
point-
need to back it out
for everybody,
them.
just for
Back it up
one-
from the
You gotta
total.
back it out for the solid waste person,
Right.
solid waste ops manager. And then just increase that, then if you back that 1.75 out, you increase it by 1755.
Yes.
Is what you're doing. Everybody else will stay at the 1.75, and the new number,
And when you decide to
In
give
the
a wage
5100,
increase,
We'll back that out for that
Adjusted
one
by-
person, or that whatever group we do.
they'll get their
it'll basically
percentage
be the same
increase.
process we're doing for the solid waste once you decide who it's for.
Yep.
Where
Okay.
you're gonna-
All right.
Got it?
You know, people will be left with 0% waiting, hanging, and hoping that we
Right,
give them a
I didn't
raise.
think
Or-
that was
yes,
fair.
yeah.
Okay.
Those are the only two that we made, except we made the change on the bond amount and adjusted that accordingly to what it would be. I think it was 400,000.
So all right, so the bond amount, I did have a question on the bond amount. Because the debt service went down, but the bond cost increased. So I was just wondering how that can happen. The bond went up from what we had at 6915 to 7,037. Right, the previous budget has 6 million.
Oh, you're looking at the totals?
Yeah, I'm looking
Yeah.
at the total for the bond, so it was,
Well, that's the total for everything, that's not our bond totals, that's the expense, that's the budget.
why does it say capital outlay bonds? 10 million. Now you're confusing.
It is the 10-100, but it stops at the line that says 100-bonds. That's the total for that 10-100 section.
I don't have,
The
I don't have
expense-
the total on this
You don't, it doesn't look like that?
Where it says,
See, the line stops that budget, and these are the grand totals for the entire budget.
I understand that, so there's actually $0 under elected for 2012 for the bonds.
right, those are, because that's a carry forward item, that's why you only see it under year-to-date. We don't budget,
But don't we have an increased cost for the bonds that we're projecting to go get this year?
that's under debt service, that's, go back one
So
section to
you
the
don't
09-900.
increase your bond value based on what we're gonna go do, you just put the new debt service in.
Right,
All right,
because when we receive those proceeds, they will go under the bond.
okay, and our debt service went down because we didn't put one of those
Right,
items on the debt.
correct.
Okay. Now, you also made a change in the town manager budget too, right? You moved the admin
What we did is we sat
salary
down.
into the economic development.
Right, what we did with that position and those benefits and holding, we sat down and decided that we would use the amount of time that person spends, and we figured it was 15% of the time she performs her job is based on doing economic development. So we took 15% of wages, 15% of benefits, professional development, and moved that to the economic development. So we had a consistent number across the board.
So, and I'm just trying to make all the numbers work. So now, when I look at the town manager line for 5102,
Yeah.
I don't see the 22% increase, which I would have expected to see, based on the change you made in the middle of the year. So, I'm assuming some of that is because you moved 15% of that money into economic development. But I still think it should be bigger. Why is it only 3.65?
What this reflects the current rate of pay.
12.75. That's what the 26,520 at, it turns out to be.
1.75.
No, I'm just saying the 26,520 is $12.35 an hour.
Yes, but what the 26,520 represents, it reflects, it reflects the current pay of $15 an hour times, you know, the 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. And then I back out 15% of that and move it to ECD. So this is, the $15 an hour is $31,200, okay? And then I backed 15% of that out and came to the 26,520 and moved it under ECD.
So when we go to ECD, we should
the
see
5102, you see
the 5,000,
$4,680, which is 15% of the current rate of 31.
And where does that get added now in EC?
Under the 5102, in administrative line.
Okay, 4680.
Yep.
Okay.
Made it a separate line.
So to be correct, from managers to 2,000 manager to 2,011, it should take 15% off the manager's recommendation to put it over economic development.
Right, if I was gonna be, yes, but the
Then-
the
then
final
you see
budget that
what
gets
it's
approved will be the elected one.
Right. Really, the
This
only
is
one
set
that
up to
counts
show
right
the
now is the
progression.
elected-
Exactly,
the
this is
elected
basically just set up to show you the progression.
Right. Good. So while we have the EC open, what drove the change in salary?
For the director?
5101, yeah.
That is, because initially I had taken out, and this is where some of the notes, I haven't had a chance to go in and update all the notes, but under the manager's, column, we were initially taking out the, 6850 from the IRP loan. But then, because we did this TIF amendment, we decided not to take those funds and apply those IRP funds to the program. So I had to add back in that 6850.
Okay.
Because now his entire salary is gonna be covered by the TIF.
Okay. I got it.
And you'll see under ECD, while we're still under there, I added all the lines for the benefits. So you see the FICA,
Yep.
retirement, workers' comp, unemployment, medical. That's for all of Scott's costs, for the ECD director's costs and the
Yep.
administrators.
50%.
50% of the administrative costs.
And you had to pull all that out of the other.
Yeah.
Yes, all of that got pulled out of all the other budget line items.
Is there something like that?
Yeah.
The other changes in town buildings, right, those changes made.
Town building. So the increase, that's for the increase here. So
Which
we
page is
added
town buildings on?
9.
9.
01 and 140. It's 90.
Okay.
So we added, looks like we added 5,000.
Yeah, we've overspent that.
We overspent
The 5320.
5320. For some reason, we've never budgeted enough for that.
Which line do you want?
5320.
5320, okay.
Is it mowing?
Mowing and treatment. Okay.
That's pesticide control and.
Can anybody tell me why we do that? We've always had somebody contracted to do pest control. Is there-
I don't
I'm not sure
know, it's
why
part
you
of
did
the
that.
original, when we built the town office, I don't know, I wasn't exactly here when we built it, but.
I would imagine that pest control has to be licensed, somebody doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
there's
oh, yeah.
license to do
I
it,
just
but
don't know why we do it.
I don't know why.
That'd be a good thing to find out.
You?
It's just for fun. I was thinking, you've been paying pest control for 3 years and I'm still here.
Good point, Roger. It's just an expense that you've had since you built the office. Quite sure why.
I guess I
Pest
would-
control services
Yeah,
come in,
DDT
do
was
stuff
that.
there or what?
Well, they come in and they spray all along the foundation. That
Right.
could be why.
Yeah.
You know, keep ants and bugs from getting underneath.
Yeah.
Does it work?
No?
No, that's- because we have ants.
Well, then find out.
They're gone after they spray.
Sprayed,
They're
yeah.
gone.
Yeah, if you didn't,
Yeah.
Right.
you do.
You have the mouse,
You know?
mice, rats.
You have the, yeah, you have the mouse traps out there? You know, the little containers where they
I don't
can go
really
in but they
need to
can't
know.
come
Yeah, you
out?
don't want to know about any rats.
Keep it to
Okay.
the numbers.
We could get rid of that, and it'll be in your office. So that-
Well, that's.
So is this
So that's-
strictly pest control or how much of it's pest control?
Pest control and the mowing.
Right,
And
but
any
how
other-
much, how much of
Pest-
the 7,000 is
control
pest control
is-
and how much of it is mowing?
Pest control is around 1,000. And the rest would be the mowing.
So-
And garden.
And garden, they weed the gardens, they mulch the gardens.
So where did the other increase come? Because we increased the bottom line by about $5,675, and this is only $3,000.
But there's multiple things in that. It was
Yeah.
increased for a different reason, but you also took out money from the wages of the council, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one thing.
Oh.
It was a $10,000 decrease.
Right, the
Yes.
town buildings, we decreased the cleaning services by 10,000,
Yeah.
because we're gonna, do that, the school's gonna do that. Come to find out that the same person who's cleaning for us
Yeah.
also is the same person that cleans for the school. So, we were aware of that. Rick and I, Kathy, Jessica and I sat down and we went through, again, some things changed on the payroll as well. They put us back, there was an additional 15,000 that had been added to the cost of making the change if we went with the school. Rick came back and said that 15,000 is something we could do.
And the other piece of the increase that you're seeing, Ruth, falls under the telephone.
That's
We
for
moved in the
moving the other-
PD. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was the final movement. The reason you see the increase between the manager and the elected is the movement of the
Movement.
PD
PD
telephone
phone.
expenses to that.
So yeah, that was about 13,000,
Yep, 12,975.
10,000 offset.
It was actually, 3,000 could have been a lot bigger number, I guess.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and under the natural gas, it's gone from 10,305 to 32,500.
The 10,000 is what we've expended year to date, Doc.
Yep.
So far, that's not the budget. That's what we've expended so far year to date.
But you budgeted, what, 20,000?
20,000.
Yep.
And so why such a huge increase? When you've only expended 10,000 and the fiscal year is almost over?
Because it also includes the natural gas that fell under the other departments. We consolidated it all
Public
under,
Works.
from Public Works,
We're moving all of the buildings.
moving all town
to
building
town
expenses
building.
into town
Yeah,
building.
if you look under Public Works and Transfer Station, there'd be zero, there would be a zero in the line for the
Correct.
natural
That's
gas.
right.
Okay, I don't need to beat a dead horse, but why do we have a contract for lawn maintenance, mowing here at the town office? We mow other places through
Well,
Public Works.
I mean, the reason we started that was so that we could keep the individuals free to do all of the things we were getting to the parks and the
Okay.
ball fields and all the other stuff. So that's why we started contracting for mowing services here at the town office. One of the
Okay,
same reasons why we did plowing here for a while at the town office was so we kept
right.
that truck free to do the ancillary areas.
So is that still serving the benefit that we
I don't know.
intended for it to
I'm just
do?
giving you the history on
Okay.
why we were doing it. I don't.
I mean, I just have to ask the question because, you know, we had somebody at the public hearing that stood up and said, where's my person to help out with the little
Yeah, I have a question on
lawns
that
and,
later too.
I think one of the things we need to do, and something that's been brought up, that I know I've discussed with Steve quite a bit, is the idea of, and the school actually approached this year too, is the idea of all the mowing that happens in town. You know, is this something that needs to be looked at as a big package, and how can you do it more efficiently? So I think that discussion is going to be coming up, and I think it is going to be probably a workshop that we have, that we talk about all the mowing, and the ball fields, the schools, the parks, and how we can actually do that. And how we take everything and put it onto one building's budget, maybe we ought to have just one big mowing budget, because that's basically what it comes down to.
Well, and you might be able, something of that volume, you might be able to sub it out.
And that's one of the things that we've got somebody working on to give us a cost estimate. I know what it cost us to do it with benefits and all that. This person is working up a cost estimate to take care of all our parks, all our gardens, and I want to see how competitive it is.
Good workshop for next year's budget before.
Plus, just so you know, there are some of the school fields that we do mow. The ones behind LES, those happen to be school fields. We mow, we take care of
Put it
them.
out to bid.
but I think that's what he's saying.
But I think
Right, I think-
that's something,
And we're
that's a big
shifting some of the
package.
responsibility from parks to mowing some of the other fields as well. So
It's a big package, I think it's one of
Well,
the things we really need to do.
that's another next workshop, is Park and Recreation.
Yes, it is.
Like,
Very good.
I would hope that it would not entail laying off anyone at Public Works Department.
I think we're already doing that.
something that we need to do a lot more work on.
But to Lori's question about, basically initiating this, why are we going here? We are losing a part-time person in public works, right?
Yes.
And we increased the cost of support for materials or whatever, for the green thumb.
That's correct.
But are we still able to mow
Yes.
their areas without that part-time person?
And why are we hiring work at the office, and laying people off?
Contractor you've had for quite a few years. And it is something that we're looking at.
Instead of paying that out to another contractor, keep that at half-time revenue.
That contractor does more than just mow our grass. He takes care of all our flower beds. I'm going to tell you, I get more compliments on this building and how good it looks in the summer with all that work. And they do, we've just removed a bunch of stuff that died. And I don't think that's been put in yet, the new stuff.
Well, and I think it ends up being less money if you pay a wage and all the benefits and everything else, right?
Yeah, it's something we have to look at.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, but I'm just looking at taking people's jobs, we're hiring slightly more.
But subbing out work sometimes is cheaper because you don't pay all of the benefits. You don't pay the insurances and the workman's comp
We
and the
really have to do a
liability.
cost
and-
analysis.
Yeah,
Just
Oh, it's a workshop now.
it is.
Once I have all the numbers, and the number of fields and gardens, I do have it on the spreadsheet and what it costs us to do it. We can talk more about
So I have a question on assessment.
it. Assessing. I'm open to it.
Page that on there.
It's on page 11.
Okay. Thank you.
So underline 5215.
52?
How does that, I'm assuming that's a summary number,
Yes.
and you have that broken out because we can't actually authorize anything over 100,000.
It's two separate contracts. One is
So
for
this is the contract for Bill to do our
the
normal
normal stuff.
assessing
Assessing services.
requirements,
Right.
and then the other part is our first year portion of the
Which is 80,000.
I thought that was supposed to go up to
They
bid.
aren't there yet. You gotta have it approved before we can put anything out to bid.
But
But
it-
not-
According to this, it's a done deal.
Dollar values is
It's a-
what we're
yeah,
asking.
it's
This is what you
dollar
agreed to
value.
pay.
Yeah.
Right. This is the money we're gonna appropriate to. So I'm assuming 40,000, based on looking at your manager budget, 40,000 is the assessing
Right.
portion of it. And 80,000 of it is revamp.
Okay, I have a question. In under wages, 5110, you've got 37,440, and you're adding the $40,000. That amounts to $77,440. Wouldn't it be cheaper just to hire somebody full-time
That is a full-time person in that position.
for
37.
$77,440?
Is it full?
We've never paid assessing that much money.
Where do you get the 70,000?
I ordered-
He's adding
I
40,000.
added up 37,440 and the 40,000, and that adds up, and a long time since I've been in high school, but it still adds up to 77,440, which is a lot more than we ever paid any assessor.
Actually,
believe-
in last year's budget, you budgeted almost 90,000 for everybody that, within that department.
Because we had an assessor and a part-time deputy is what I believe it used
That's
to be.
right.
Right. And so that was, you know, you have to account for the previous assessor's wages plus the part-time, which would probably be, you know, over 70-something thousand, so.
Yes, actually, we have to.
Why is there only a 1.35% increase on the 5110 line?
It's a shift into, I broke out codes from assessing, so that removes the code enforcement officer's wages, that was budgeted in that line item last year into its own budget. And it now reflects the deputy assessing clerk at their current rate, which was a move from temporary to full-time.
So this is one of the situations where, similar to the administrative
Yeah.
assistant, all the salary was in one
Assessing
department.
and codes
Yeah,
used to
okay.
be combined.
Yeah.
Performing functions in other departments, and you've simply broken
Broken
it
it up.
into
Yeah.
So
where
it's-
they're at, where their costs should be, and representative to departments.
That's right.
Correct.
Yeah. Just like we did with communications. Please.
I have a question, it's not under this.
Go for it.
When you gave us this salary comparison earlier in the year, I kind of overlooked it because I knew that you were going to adjust several salaries or wanted to adjust several salaries. I was looking at it again in comparison to see what other things were really out of line. Leave parks, recreation, and all that complicated thing out of it. One that really sticks out to me is codes enforcement. Codes enforcement's supposed to be 37,587, and yet all the wages all around are in the 50s plus. And I want to know why we haven't proposed anything for that position.
We did last year, and it didn't happen.
Yeah, it did happen.
The
We
point
made that
is-
adjustment.
The point is, if we're making the adjustment, this is as bad off as the rest of them. And I'm thinking about if something ought to be included, even under Mike's plan, would be an improvement.
Is there a reason that he wasn't?
No, there's no reason.
It seems like it would make sense.
If you want to add that,
To add something under there on that,
let me.
back in
let me
the
take a
elected
look at that,
officials.
and I'll make a recommendation.
$1,000 something. I mean, we need to show our appreciation for that individual who works hard.
I've also happened to know that the work that's involved and the work that's, the follow-up that's involved, and you would know it too, is tremendous.
Oh, yeah.
And, a lot of extra effort goes into that work.
Be a very thankless job sometimes.
Whether it's perfect or not, it's another thing, but there's a lot of work that goes into it.
An option is to leave the
12.5.
12.5 as it stands under elected officials and use some of that funding rather than reduce it from the solid waste, adjustment.
I'd say leave it in and we can
Leave
talk
it
about it in the
at
workshop.
12.5
just to
and
make sure
discuss.
what-
Might need more than that, might need to be 13.5 or 13 to really.
Well, we have to be careful with
Right.
how much higher we go to stay at a flat tax rate.
Right, yeah.
On code, while we're there, Why is there no prior year budget?
Because before it was under assessing.
It's all under assessing.
And it's, to be honest, I haven't played around in Trio enough of how to change prior year budgets to have it reflect
can't.
otherwise.
In finance, I had a question.
Oh,
on
1155.
page 15, under the 5110 wages, looks like there's an additional reduction from what we originally had from the manager. What is representative of that?
It's just representative of the hours necessary. When the manager's recommendation was created, it was based on the assumption of wage level in conjunction with hours worked. And there's been some changes in the hours necessary to the applicable wage amount. So someone that was making, say, $15 an hour, I had budgeted for 30 hours, now may only be at a $13 rate for those 30 hours, based on new developments and workings with description changes and working with the school department. It's just a shift
Internal
between
restructuring.
what the wage level is and the hours needed in conjunction with that wage level.
So does it still keeps the 20
Yes.
hours of part-time?
Yes, it
Yes.
does.
Good job, Jessica.
Also, I think it's in the tax collector budget on page 16. We have one that's adding a part-time.
Yes.
So, and this is just a thought, but would it make sense to take the reduction of hours on the finance side for the individual employees and utilize them with the additional 20 hours
That is an
for the
option.
tax
That's
side?
something that we can
So
talk
the,
about.
and my only thought there is, and it's only from the standpoint of, you got a 20-plus year employee that has a ton of knowledge for your town, right? So lose them entirely, right? Because you might lose an in-person entirely for a 20-hour week, right? They might go find another job or whatever, but if we can still make the changes.
If we do that, we'll have to change that number a little bit because of how the
Pay scale.
pay scale in the union is. We'll have to make
It's
some
certainly,
adjustments.
it's certainly been discussed as far as it being an option, but that will be something, if that option is chosen, it will change this.
My other thought behind that is if we run into problems in the transition, then you have the employee.
Well,
to address
you do, but
and
it's
help.
also a union position, and if it's only 20 hours in that position, that's probably all you're gonna get for that position, time-wise in the week.
Well,
Theoretically, that's what a union I mean, I'm
I
just, if
understand- I
you go by
understand
the
your
book
point.
and you go by the black and white, I'm not saying
Right.
by any
I
means
understand
that the
your point.
person would do this.
I understand your
I
point.
don't believe for a minute that would happen, but if you go by the paper,
Right.
and that's all I'm doing is
Yeah.
trying to cover my base, because
Nope.
union.
all I'm doing, there's
Okay.
nothing
So
personal on
that's,
that at all.
we
All right.
are talking about doing that.
And then, I'm not sure which line it is, but the overlay,
Overtime.
where is that? Anyway.
It's near the end.
It wasn't
Under abatements, wasn't it?
Page 19,
Page 90.
oh, 1170.
Oh, yeah, miscellaneous, yeah. No overlay?
That's not,
It's not part of the budget.
yeah, that doesn't
But it's in
make-
our, but it's in our tax calculation. We
Right.
have
Yes.
other questions on,
Yeah.
so doesn't it become money that we have to appropriate to expend? No?
When you-
I don't think it was last year.
No. When you commit taxes, that's when you,
But the only reason I asked is because we had a budgeted value in 2010.
And a budgeted
And
value
the
will
budgeted
go
value
in
is
based
2011.
off of the tax rate calculation,
Yeah.
but it's not something you guys vote on. It's a fallout of your vote.
and you can't vote because you won't know what it is until we go to commit taxes.
Right.
We have a pretty good estimate, but once all the new additions and things are put in and all the depreciation from personal property made, which they're ahead of schedule, they think they should have that within the next month. It's amazing to me.
Can I ask how much we have in surplus anyway, right now?
Surplus?
Surplus and overlay are two different
With the
things.
school and the town, it's about 1.7
1.7 million?
million.
Which compared to 5 years ago is about 2 million, 3
Sure,
million less.
yeah.
So,
And not at the 12.5.
let's just put that.
Requirement.
Go for it.
Police?
Please, next page, thank you.
It's 20.
Line 5271. I thought we were moving that all to
Yeah, we
technology.
I moved 13,000 of it to, I think it's 13,000 into the technology because it related to, the
Yeah.
software
Yeah.
agreement. I left the 5,000 after further discussion with the police chief that this related to, other service arrangements, agreements. So
Not
they
related to technology.
they were not technology related.
So he basically has software that he buys and he has to be able to use.
Or other service
Maybe we
type
could-
agreements.
Maybe we could change that line description.
Just
I
call
will
it
try.
service.
Or find another line to put it into or something.
That was a discussion, we moved in that position.
No, we had a discussion, I don't know, last workshop we had. And I didn't hear any agreement with the council about what
I
they
didn't
wanted
get
to
any
do.
agreement at all.
So, when I say we didn't hear agreement, I didn't hear agreement to remove it out of what was presented.
I don't know, how do people feel on that?
I thought that we actually, as council, I mean, my opinion was, and I think opinion of a few other people, that maybe was consistent not so much on that particular part, that personnel, but more the idea of the department head and manager actually put together a budget that actually fulfilled their needs, and that's what we're going by, not so much actually going by every individual position. I mean, that's how I felt about it, and I think I expressed that to Mike, that it was more the idea of going by what the department head and the manager's evaluation and recommendation was, not so much.
Right. And by law, I think that's what was okay to do with speculation.
I have a question on, you went to line items, budgeting on overtime, temporary, sick, vacation, blah, 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 court, training, holiday, and so that we could see just how much it all is. I added all of that up, and that's $110,782, and that's quite a, almost $30,000 more than his
No,
expended.
the 2011 budget, if you look at that column, the 5111 line plus
Yeah.
the 5112,
Yeah.
that's 108,000 right there. The breakout you see under the 2012 elected reflects that 90,000 plus the 18,000 with a 1.75% increase in their wages.
Right. Yeah.
So it's only a 1.75 increase over the 2011 budget. It's just a little confusing because we shifted account numbers, and it's just to make the department heads' lives easier, to give them a greater breakout, and tracking purposes for their costs.
ACO,
ACO.
Moving on.
does that now include Durham?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So
We now have 4 towns.
the total cost
22.
didn't really change from the time we proposed it to ours. Because I was thinking when you gave us your budget,
Yeah,
it didn't include Durham.
it didn't include,
It didn't.
it did not include.
So the cost doesn't go up by us
I'm
adding
sorry,
Durham.
this is a technical trio issue. In order to give a presentation to Durham and show them what the budget would be, I needed to update trio so that it would be reflective of that increase in salary. So because we didn't have the elected column populated yet with everything else, I had to update the manager column to reflect those changes. So that's why you don't see a change between the manager and the elected columns. But the difference between the 2011 budget and the 2012 is
Okay.
indicative of the increase to
Well,
Durham
if I
with
was
Durham.
smart enough to look at the previous sheet, right, we would have said 67,500 and now it's 69,975.
But limited
You're
changes.
just making me look
Cookies.
good because I have the answers.
Public work.
I didn't know you did that.
You do not say.
Which one, I'm sorry, Public Works?
Public works, and it's page 26. I think I know the answer to this, but the director's salaries are gone because they're all in the town engineer's budget now.
The director's salary is gone because it's all under the wage line. All the personnel are under the wage
Well-
line. The Public Works directors, that is now encompassing solid waste and everything else, is under the town engineer budget.
Okay, so the higher level, solid waste, PW sewer,
Is in,
is in the town engineer
Yes.
budget.
Yeah.
And then operation management
Yes.
and everything
It's all
else is
in
in the
wages.
5110 budget.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I wanted to ask a question on the sheet you gave us for the savings.
Okay.
I understand how we got to the 92,216. And just to make the savings a total savings, I think you need to include, which I don't see in here, town engineer's portion of the whole public works effort of the salary. So for example, if the town engineer is now sewer, PW, and solid waste, and his salary is, I'm use a number.
75,000, that's full.
Divided by 3,
You're
right?
75.
So, right, a third of it would be an increase against these savings. Because we're giving him an increase, a third of his increase would be
The
a
sheet-
cost increase.
The sheet you have is reflective of 50% of his salary, because currently half of his wages are paid out of the
So-
sewer budget.
But I didn't, where,
The top section is,
the current salary of 34,655?
It's 50%, the other 50% is out
The
of
other
sewer.
50
Projected salary of 37.
correct. 50% of his salary is paid out of sewer.
Where are you?
On page 26, but then looking at the town engineer as in conjunction with the town
So-
engineer.
It's the town engineer.
Page 25.
So the town engineer is at 3561.
I think that initial analysis you have is off of the manager column, which is 37,420.
Well, actually, the 34,655 is last year's budget.
Yes,
So you're saying the 37,428 is what the manager wants to give, which represents the 80% increase? And then 50% of that is gonna go into,
this represents 50%. The 37,428. And last year's budget of 34,655, that's 50% of the salary.
Why is it not spread amongst the three departments?
So
It's,
It's,
the
oh, as far
increase here
as.
is $3,200.
There's half a third
I'm-
split somewhere else.
The increase is $31.79 from last year to this year. Which 50% of that goes to the public works. Because his total increase is $6,200 or $300. Because the other half's in the sewer. Right?
Correct.
50% was town engineer.
Yes.
50% was sewer.
Yes.
Now you're taking his salary and saying 50% of it goes to
Currently, the way you.
sewer and 50% goes to public works, so we don't have any increase in town engineer. Right? If I understand how you did this
Yes.
savings sheet,
The saving sheet just took the position that what he was making last year, what the town engineer was making last year,
right?
giving him the projection.
think I
I'm
under-
just not sure I'm
I
following
think I
you.
understand that, but what you now have is you have one person wearing three hats,
Yeah,
right? So similar to your admins that
Mhm.
were in two different departments,
okay,
if you split him out, or that person out, into the three different departments,
okay,
right? That would show what your costs are in those departments,
Okay.
rather than us lumping it all into the town engineer.
okay, that can
Right?
be done.
And then I just wanted to make sure that that was part of, was reflected in this calculation of savings
Okay.
based on it. Because today, or yesterday, the town engineer's salary was split 50-50 with sewer and town engineer. And
So
now,
now you wanna see
you
it
kinda gotta,
further.
it's now like you almost gotta split it 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
Okay,
Right?
That's easy.
Because he's doing the responsibilities of all three. So I'm assuming the 30%, 33% of his time is going into the spot, as best you can, as an estimate. So,
I think each one of those budgets should be reflective of those.
so I'm thinking each one of those budgets should have that portion of the director's salary in it. So you'd end up with 2/3 of it in the municipal budget and 1/3 of it in the sewer budget. So when we go to do our sewer budget will have to go down from salary.
the only thing I'll, well, yes, I'll just confirm that the amount of time will be third, just to make sure we, because we're dealing
Yeah,
with
I
two
mean,
different funding
whatever it is, I'm
sources.
just using it
Yeah,
because it was easy
and I just,
math
right,
and
right.
and stuff like that.
That's coming back to this.
Right, it may not be, it may be, might be 60%
The
town.
town has to employ somebody for set
Right.
hours,
I
but
just,
there's no
I just
requirement
would
you have
wanna
to
make
have.
sure, because we're dealing with two
There's no
different
state requirement.
funding
A lot of small
budgets.
towns
don't know that
And actually, it's really important.
There's a lot of misinformation.
Yeah, okay.
There's no requirement you have a town engineer at all.
You really have to
Asking you
focus.
why.
And you may not have it even because of the
We need it for
operation.
Yeah.
job that has to be done.
All three will have an operations manager, so, yeah, but,
Why is public lighting and hydrant rental really for the public works?
Hydrant rental's not possible.
All by itself.
It's all, no,
It wasn't it?
never has been. It's always been its own. It's all 315. Page 32.
There's town lighting though, because of public works, right?
I think
Street
that's
lights is its own.
It is to have its own.
320 is its own.
It isn't.
It is its own. It's always been its own.
Yeah. 320.
And it's listed under public works / street light and traffic lights, that'd be why you're thinking
It
that.
was all in the public works?
They're not counting in the
No,
totals,
those
it's
are
just listed
probably
under the.
traffic light maintenance stuff,
Right.
things like that.
Are you looking at it because electricity has a 0 on it this time?
I don't know. I don't know.
Repair and maintenance on
I
it.
looked at it, I thought it was all in the public works.
It's on pages 32 and 33 in the current budget.
Hydrant rental, pretty much.
In the new budget.
So,
I mean, just the way it's broken down, it says public works / like solid waste, but it doesn't mean we're putting all that into public works. Just the way the trio categorizes things.
so in 04425, page 41.
Did you have a question, Don?
Yes, speaking of hydrant, speaking of hydrant rental,
Oh, okay, go ahead. Hydrant rental?
I thought the water department fees, including hydrant rental, were PUC approved rates that only increased at that time. So therefore, my question is, why does the rate go up for hydrant?
I think our rate went up in the middle of last year, didn't it?
Yeah.
Based on their.
They made
based on
it
the
for their
law
bond.
Okay.
That we did, and they adjusted their rates in the middle of the year.
Yeah.
Cover that?
Otherwise, it can't.
Right,
Right, right.
correct. So on page 41, L4, 425, the question is, what happens if we don't pay out?
Oh, we are.
The
We have no electric
alcohol
budget.
fees
It's in the tip.
and
It's in the tip.
Moxie Day
That's
are
right.
now covered under the
Okay.
TIF
All of the
amendment.
development.
That's why we have sheets for that.
We just decided we were gonna take a break this year.
How much income do we get
from paying
from the
it.
tips?
Excuse me?
How much income do we get from the tips?
Well, based on,
Projecting around 110,000.
110,000.
we're at 109, 57.
Yeah, we're pretty tight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I just wrote on the little whiskers.
We've had two tight years, last year and this year.
So,
Ask it,
huh?
ask it.
So I have questions on our tax rate calculation.
Yeah, I don't have my copy.
I thought that was, I don't know who was sent it. You have a copy of it?
I don't have my copy
Would
in
you like
front
to go
of me.
make
but-
copies?
Look out for the rest of us.
I'm counting.
Yeah.
Was that the updated one?
No, this one is not, but
The one we got.
I know, we have another one today. Lori? I know.
Well, he asked questions on what I asked.
You can ask her. There isn't any change. We did. For the tax rate.
No, she's talking about the savings by condensing, giving her.
Is the budget season, we won't include these other than they just
Only because you're shifting everything.
Right, it's all the
Yeah, I mean,
reorganizing
it's
lines and
just
stuff.
because we're really trying to make it, in the long run, I think we make it better to see where the costs are at.
This is the painful
We
part.
really need to be able to
Right,
track
it
the
is.
cost.
And now you go and say, well, what do we spend for buildings? What do we spend for technology? What do we spend for-
What's that?
Did you hear about the new video that came out on YouTube about dog teeth?
Hopefully nobody can read that.
What's it called?
Oh,
It's on
yeah.
YouTube. Ultimate dog teeth. And it shows the dog kind of
We have some things on June 7th that we'll be talking about before we do the budget that change things. On the actions that you want.
He does voiceover with the dog, so that the dog is speaking. It is great.
You say change.
I gotta bring a cup of tea back. $5.
Lost
Yeah, what the cost was for the school, looking up.
No. Zero.
They're actually do it for free with only one.
That's nice to know.
Would that kind of remind you of the new
They're,
I think they have
that's
about 5
interesting
minutes.
because how far do they have to run the line?
One I just
They,
think probably the such school.
Mike,
Yeah.
they
Going all the
don't
way to
have
Sud,
the,
right?
that worksheet
Savings.
that you were looking at, the savings
With only 1 year, I
worksheet.
thought
They
it was
don't
a
have that.
5-year look in, but.
You didn't hear about
Correct, yeah, we don't have it.
Yeah.
We're never given
retail.
it.
Gas company?
Charging, can you, or I don't know who you emailed it, the savings sheet?
yeah.
When you make your final changes and validate that you've already got it in there.
Okay, just
Can you make sure?
One more.
Another one, please.
Perfect.
There you go.
Still sitting in there in the corner.
All right.
That's interesting because
Oh, you
we
got
have been
these
given
on.
a
Is
quote
that one?
to come from
You got one?
197
Okay.
up School Street,
I can
NCM.
pass over that.
She's got it.
Oh, you got it? Okay, you got it.
Yeah, I
Okay.
got it.
Common. 75 grand.
Try and get one of these. Roger?
Well, they originally said that was like a $41,000 figure.
Mike, right this way.
And they actually came back and said, yeah, right, we're gonna do
I
it.
guess it's time to make a phone call.
And that's, they quoted with the 1-year contract, and after the first year, they can pick whoever they want to do. There's 5 providers on that one pipe.
Oh, really?
Yes. They're not the only provider, that's just, 5
Okay.
offers.
Okay, shoot.
So, on the tax rate calculation,
Yes.
and I'm looking at the fine print one, the one that strains your eyes, the big one is last year's.
Pick on my phone.
That's okay.
Okay, which one do you,
I'm
okay.
just
It's a
trying
joke
to-
around
last
the
year, just
office
trying
that I
to
print
depict
about
to
this
them.
big.
I'm looking at 5A and B, where it says the total of Beta exemption and Betty exemption or whatever.
Betty.
Betty. Those two numbers, the 6.1 million and the 4.9 million, are identical to last year's numbers. And I'm trying to understand, how can they stay the same when we have loss of valuation for personal property? And a lot of the businesses that we've lost, plus they lose their depreciation value on their personal property. So how can the exemption stay the same if the values are changing?
Values, all you're gonna see this year for valuation change in personal property is depreciation. Some of the businesses that are closing, they did this after April 1st. So they will still be taxed on whatever they
And
have.
that's okay, but if the depreciation goes down, doesn't the better or Betty exemption go down with it?
Could, yeah.
So,
Again-
I don't think you can use the same numbers in our calculations for,
Understood.
right?
Okay, taxable personal property valuation, number 2.
That went down.
Yeah, that's
Right.
all inclusive of, again, this is a calculation sheet that until Bill has all his numbers.
I know, but all I'm
I
trying
know.
to do is I'm trying to make sure, at least I cover my base
Yep.
of understanding that there's gonna be no tax rate impact when we say there's no tax rate impact. All I'm doing is to walk through this to make sure I protect us all, right? And I don't understand why, or how those numbers can stay the same, and I think if they go down, they cause impact to all your numbers the rest of the way down.
They will make, there'll have to be some adjustments.
Potentially can impact your tax rate.
Yeah.
So,
And again,
I'm just
just to
concerned
tell
that
you,
we're using the same numbers.
Real
and we're
estate,
not-
the real estate valuation is the same, right? For 25. We haven't made any adjustments for any new additional valuation increases, which
Right.
is garages and whatever anybody did. So that we haven't changed either. That should go up. And before, Bill has said that he's pretty close to finishing everything, the splits and additional work, and I haven't seen the number yet. So,
And so, if you go down to line 11, right, total assessment, I'm having trouble understanding how that can be more this year if your personal property went down. Last year's number was 12,383,000. This year you're projecting 12,405.
how could it go down, is your question?
No, how can it go up? Your valuation went down because you lost personal property, right? But yet you're using a higher total assessment number.
Which line is that, Mike?
Line
11. Okay, that's adding your county tax, municipal
County tax
appropriation,
went down.
TIF financing.
Municipal
That's not the value
appropriation.
of your town, that's what we're spending there, you're saying. And line 6 is the total valuation.
Right, but your county tax went down, right?
Right.
Your municipal appropriations stayed the same, just about, I mean, within $500-600. And your TIF financing stayed the same, and so did the school share stay the same. How does it go up?
The local education
I'm sorry.
appropriation number has to change. It didn't
Huh?
change. The local education
I'll double check that in the
I
calculation.
think, well, at least from one side to the other, the municipal appropriation says 6374 on the new side, and it was 6347 on the previous side. So that's an increase of almost 30,000 right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where the money's coming from, and that line 8 is still appropriation.
And then,
Municipal appropriations, how many?
Right. By about $30,000.
and how do we get municipal appropriations to be higher?
Sure.
How's that calculated to be higher? Is that based on the fact that our veteran bidding programs didn't change?
No, the assessments don't have anything to do with the bank.
I'm talking about the municipal, so that.
The municipal appropriation
How
is
did
out of our
municipal
budget.
appropriation go up? Is that our budget?
That's
our
the
budget.
budget.
Yeah.
So our budget now is 7 million or something, right?
Well, the 7 million that you see includes the ECD department, that,
The Economic Development
Right.
Department, that 7 million includes this one we're
So you need
removing
to
for
back
TIF.
out.
So you gotta back that
So you're
total
taking
out.
109,000 out of it.
So
So if I do 109,000 out of that, I'm gonna be at 69 something, right?
Not 63, or
I won't be at
63.
63, right?
63, yeah, it'd be at 6
I won't be
million.
at 63 if I take 100,000 out of 7 million.
well, and this sheet that I gave you was before the final elected, I believe it. And when you're probably looking at that, I don't remember when I sent you this one, but this is my work in progress sheet. It's not a final, this is what I use to make sure when I present a budget to you that I'm not going over the tax rate as well. So this is a working sheet. I'd have to go back to see my different versions and see which one, what changes it included or did not include, et cetera.
Okay.
I can't,
I mean,
I
all I'm doing
realize.
is just, I mean,
absolutely.
I want the numbers to be right.
Yep.
Yep.
So we go and, like, what I want to see
Absolutely.
and understand is based on our final budget that we said we're going to vote on June 7th,
Right.
with whatever
Once-
changes.
If you can
moving
come to
forward.
a conclusion that you're okay with the numbers that you have for expenses, we can go back and make the adjustments, because there have been some changes today that we didn't have a chance to get out to you, that we had to make, so the numbers are gonna be a little bit different. And I will check with Bill now how the Betty and Better program shift will be on this.
what is it planned for the vote?
June 7th.
June 7th.
So,
So the veteran one is the 15th.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, we need,
You get all the information they get.
well, I don't see any cover document for this department as a whole like we had last year. You
Oh,
had
the
line
vote
item
sheet?
listed,
Oh.
yeah.
This sheet,
When you
no,
went and approved it,
no,
you went
oh,
down
this
by-
sheet's for that.
that one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've got it ready, but it just has to be,
It's gonna have to
you know,
be
populate the
adjusted.
right numbers.
To make it more readable.
Well, this is a copy of it.
it's gonna give us color copies.
Okay, so I'd like to get an updated one of these for the June 7th meeting, based on our budgets and all the changes that either, you know, got coming or whatever they're gonna present to it, so we can make sure, because I just wanna make sure that we are comfortable that all these numbers are what they're supposed to be. Because on line, what is it, 19?
Tax for community.
Right, and I thought the 9,507,000, I thought that has to meet the minimum number.
I
which
think
would
you have
be-
to add in line 19 and 21 and 22. I think you have to add back in the homestead and Betty, because the tax for commitment is based off of the total taxable valuation, which is line 3 above, which is pre-homestead and Betty
Well,
valuations.
I thought it had minimum number up on line 17 or 16. Thought it had to match your 9,739,294. Right, I mean, this would tell me that based on how you're doing your tax commitment, that you're only raising 9,507,000, right? Not 9,739,000, which is what I think we're saying the net to be raised by local property tax, which would be 200,000, would be about 232,000 off.
So where do we get this 9.5 number from?
9.5 takes the projected tax rate times the total taxable valuation, which, I mean, this is all a pre-determined.
I understand.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure
that, right?
too, yeah.
So what this tells me, just looking at it simplistically, and I don't know this form like Bill or whoever, but I think I need to, from a tax commitment, I need to raise 9,739,294 based on the way this sheet is set up. So that means I can't be at a .021.
And you will if you add in, I think it's, the number is coming from the overlay.
Yeah, Mike, if you look at the other side, comparing the number 19, number 20 figures from the year before, 19 on the other side is a different number in the outside column here. It's 9,548.
Right, that's higher than what we needed to raise.
Right, but then if you come down to 20, it's 9,583
Down to 20.
in the first column.
Well, that's what we have to raise. The 9,583,754 is what we had to raise last year.
Right, and line 19 only shows 9,548,250. Your tax for commitment.
So that's less, just like
Which
this
was
one is.
less. So if you flip it over, see 19, this
Yeah.
number
Right.
is,
About 30-some thousand less.
yeah. And it's the same, it's coming down the same way on the back side here.
So, I mean, my question still is, how do you get to being able to raise your total amount for taxes? Because that's what we're supposed to do.
That would be an assessing question. This form is all pre-calculated, so that, I'm working with it from that standpoint, but as far as,
I just want to make sure
I
I'm not,
understand.
I hate for us to be $200,000 short when we go through and vote this, and we end up going to take the 21 hours.
So in other words, you need to get updated numbers from Mr. Tynan so you can put this in.
That's a bill question.
Yeah.
So-
And
He sat
I
through
would
his
say it's
production and
a-
actually went over that 3 or 4 times, how he actually backs into it. It was very confusing.
Yeah.
Well, it's not easy, because we don't do it every day. but-
Well, and this is why I asked him for the form electronically, so that I could link it and put in my municipal appropriations, given everything else equal, so that this would calculate like it would for him, so that I can see what where the tax rate currently falls based on the current expenditures. But as far as any more detail, I would have to defer to him on that. That's,
Now, on Road 12, the state municipal revenue sharing,
yeah,
I thought we were using something less than 830,000.
No.
no,
We got-
830 is there.
Yeah,
I thought we
actually,
did a
the,
minimum of 750.
we started with 750, and the state's been going back and forth, state revenue department. They actually are projecting, based on Governor Page's budget, that we will receive about 840,000. We wanted to be a little bit conservative when we use the 830.
Yeah.
We get more if this budget's not accepted.
If
right?
his budget gets turned down, we will see an additional 400,000. That's what they're projecting.
The school will lose that 400,000. right?
No, actually, the school only loses about 150 per
I
year.
thought it was actually.
So that's a net gain for us.
Well,
But that's all based on speculation in the economy.
Right. So you're comfortable using 830,000?
Because that's conservative.
And they alluded to that in the conference, annual convention that I went to this past week in Bangor, that is a conservative number to use for revenue sharing. That's what most municipalities do.
We'll go with the low end. DLPL makes a vote.
Varies.
The way we're viewing what's happening in Augusta is it came out of committee that they wanted to keep the formula for revenue sharing the same, but only funded at 94 million. And if that's the case, then the 830 would be even conservative. If they vote to keep it exactly the same and fund it at the same level that they had prior years, it will increase.
Did you get an answer, Mike, to your, what's written under line 15, when it says, what is this?
No, I don't know what that is.
It's just a
that a check number or
formula,
something?
it's a formula I have in there that takes that 9.7 million and backs out the local education appropriation to tell me what relates to the municipality.
I figured it was some kind of check.
I
number or
added, yeah,
something.
I added it.
Can I ask a question, Joe?
Yes.
Can you read your baseline or something for the budget, for the state budget?
For revenue
Or
share.
what years, you mentioned something there, right? I didn't get you about something.
No, the state revenue department always puts out projected revenue sharing numbers,
Yes.
and it keeps changing. We were at 750,000 when we first started the budget process. When Governor LePage put in his budget requests and changes that he would like to see, it changed the whole process. He wanted to change the formula and how it's distributed. He wanted to change and make it an appropriated total dollar amount versus based on a percentage. Coming out of committee, the recommendation is going to be to keep the distribution amount or formula the same, but only allow 94 million to be the maximum that they'll appropriate,
Okay.
which gives the state about another 40 million that they have. Yeah.
Okay.
It makes it easier for
Put it back on the municipalities to find ways to do it.
Steve, that sheet of paper there that you're gonna get everybody, that is the final, right above your left hand?
This
That
one?
one? Can the Budget Advisory Board get that before June 7th, so we
Oh,
can
yeah.
get together and
We'll-
do it?
Yep, once we have a
we
pretty good
finalize
idea of
it.
what we're gonna have for numbers,
Okay.
we'll fill it and it'll look nice.
Okay. Yeah, as soon as we can get it good, because we'll need to meet and come up
Yeah.
with our decisions and
Do
stuff.
that by Friday.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
To get you everything so you have the
So didn't,
weekend.
I thought you guys already gave us
On the school side.
On the bonds.
So we could vote on
the
it.
school side.
School side.
Well, they
School
gave
side.
us you gave us recommendations.
Yeah.
For the
at
school side.
last-
No, you actually gave recommendations
Yeah.
for this, for the, yeah.
That was for the bonds.
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
That was just for the
when you don't
bonds.
have a-
No, it's actually for, the
No,
recommendation
one of
came
our
was
workshops.
one of the workshops came forward and recommended to go along with everything we did, except the one thing that there was the wages.
Okay,
one
yeah, that
thing.
was we gave those recommendations.
Exactly, yeah.
But things have changed now too,
Right.
so
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
should have an opportunity to do some
Absolutely.
reconsideration.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have the option to change our minds.
Yes.
That's all.
Right, yeah, you guys should probably hold a meeting sometime, before our
Nothing is
meeting
cut in
and give us a,
Yeah, so we
an
need-
actual, take a vote and give us a.
Yeah, that's
decision
why
what
I'm
you want.
asking for that
Exactly.
paper as soon as we
Right.
can, so we can do
Yeah.
that.
Can we get that before the June, can we get your results before the June 7th? So that we know.
As soon as we get them, I'll email them to all of you. Or I'll get them to
We'll have it out
Steve.
by Friday. All the changes that we've recommended and adjustments.
Yeah, I mean, but can you get them those sheets?
Yeah.
with the right
Yeah,
values
by
on it?
Friday.
By Friday.
Because I think we should see what they're gonna
You should-
respond
you
back
should-
to. Before we get ready to
These
go.
sheets are already.
I would like to see one change, and I'm sorry, but going back to the assessing department, I think that should be broken down into two lines. The temporary wages, or whatever it is, and the estimate for the revaluation. I think that should be broken down into two lines because that is a self-assumption.
The 123 that Mike was talking about
Yeah, break
initially.
it down to 40 and 80.
Exactly, that's what she's talking about. So it's actually just not showing anything of what one.
Okay. We can do that.
And-
Add a line.
Sure.
And having a name in there for a services for revaluation is an assumption, and I really would like to see that removed because that hasn't been out to bid yet.
I didn't hear what you
The
said.
dollar
no, I'm
amount's
sorry.
not gonna change.
Right.
That doesn't matter, but it's an assumption that somebody has already been hired to do it.
No names or anything on it, just basically says it's
Dollar.
for assessing though. I mean, in the budget wise, there's no particular name linked to that
An
budget.
inventor, an assessment.
When I put it out to bid,
What she's talking about.
I'll restructure the verbiage in the note.
If you look at 5215, it says William Van Kunen, assessing
oh,
services.
we can take Bill's name out of it. And that's- we just leave it contracted services. We break it into
That's the way
240
it
or
should be,
80.
because that's an assumption.
Well, I would make a 5215 and a 5216.
Yeah.
However you do it, just,
I will break it out.
It's all over it.
I will say the money has to be there before you put it out to bid.
Could
You
you
can't
add-
you can't put out to bid on a contract that
Could
doesn't.
you put in a
money hasn't been put on.
5217 and give me $1 million raise?
And I had to enlarge it so I really
Did you
could
want to?
read it. Will there be a municipal referendum as well as a school budget referendum
Yeah.
on June 14th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, but not in the school.
You gotta vote,
You
on
gotta
the
vote on the
bond.
school budget, and you gotta vote on.
Oh, that's only on the
Bond, it's
bond.
on the bonds, yes, yeah.
All right, that's a little misleading.
Right, they just chose to print it that way. Can't control those newspapers, yeah.
It's a
Well, the
municipal
paper didn't
referendum.
choose to print it, they printed how it's
Yes, yeah.
given to them.
The contracted services don't.
Yes, yes.
Right,
Yeah,
it's technically
it's
correct.
Press,
It's
they only
not-
print
right.
they feel free to print.
But you break it down.
whatever you want.
And they'll cut and paste it however they want, yeah.
Evaluation.
Right, I realize that, but I'm just thinking.
They print what is given to them.
Write something on the
So that it all falls on the contract.
No,
Yeah.
nothing.
They print
I've
what
asked
is
Steve
given.
to create a organizational chart to show us what the jobs are, like a before and after of, you know, how it is now and how his proposal
Right,
is
she
changing,
knows
so I
how
can
to put
understand it
them in.
better.
She went.
You know.
So you're the conceptual.
Okay, so are we still going on, still discussing stuff, or are we done and just general discussion now, or what are we doing?
I think we're done if everyone else wants to. Is there anything more to discuss here? We're still going on. We're still in session. We haven't adjourned
Okay,
yet.
that's what I was wondering,
Sorry,
because
yeah.
it looks like everything's
Okay.
breaking apart.
All right. Anything further to discuss here on the budget, or are we all done for tonight? Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
You don't need one.
Don't need one?
Yeah.
All right, we're adjourned.
Right, yeah.
Is that what you wanted to hear?
Any questions, please don't hesitate to either come see me, or call, or email.